In the shadowy depths of Ravenwood Manor, a cunning thief known as the Chameleon weaves a web of deception, stealing priceless treasures and leaving a trail of clues. As Hercule Poirot, disguised as the flamboyant Henri Dupin, sets a daring trap to unmask the elusive criminal, secrets unravel and danger lurks in every corner. With a murderer among the guests and a final showdown looming, can Poirot outwit the chameleon before the midnight masquerade reveals a shocking truth? Chapter 1. The Mysterious Invitation. Hercule Poirot sat at his polished mahogany desk in his London apartment, the morning light filtering through the lace curtains and casting delicate patterns across the room. His fingers, precise as ever, adjusted the alignment of a silver letter opener, ensuring it lay parallel to the edge of the desk. The air smelled faintly of lavender polish, a testament to his housekeeper's diligence, and the faint ticking of a mantel clock punctuated the silence. Poirot's mustache, immaculately groomed, twitched slightly as he contemplated the day's correspondence. A small stack of letters rested before him, each opened with care, their contents ranging from polite invitations to tedious advertisements. But one letter lying unopened at the top caught his eye. It was different, its envelope heavier, the paper creamier, with no return address. The handwriting, elegant yet forceful, bore an air of mystery that piqued the detective's curiosity. He reached for the letter, his movements deliberate, and slid it open with a single clean stroke. Inside, a single sheet bore a message written in black ink, the words flowing with a flourish that suggested both confidence and secrecy. Poirot's green eyes narrowed, his lips pursing beneath the mustache. A game, it said. A challenge. He leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled, and allowed his little gray cells to stir. The letter was no ordinary invitation. It hinted at a crime, or the promise of one, orchestrated by someone bold, enough to summon Hercule Poirot to their stage. The mention of a master of deception intrigued him most. Was this a taunt from a criminal he had crossed before, or a new adversary eager to test their mettle against his intellect? He rose, pacing the room with measured steps, his polished shoes clicking softly on the hardwood floor. Ravenwood Manor, he recalled, was the country estate of Lord Reginald Ashford, a wealthy industrialist known for his lavish gatherings and eclectic guest lists. Poirot had heard whispers of Ashford's recent acquisition, a collection of rare jewels including the famed emerald star, a necklace said to be worth a king's ransom. Could this be the grand performance the letter alluded to? A theft, perhaps, or something darker? The clock chimed 11, pulling Poirot from his reverie. He returned to the desk, rereading the letter. The absence of a signature, a friend, was deliberate, a flourish meant to unsettle. Yet it only fueled his resolve. Poirot was not one to shy from a challenge, especially one that promised to test the full measure of his deductive prowess. He penned a brief acceptance, addressing it to Lord Ashford's estate, and rang for his valet to post it. The game, as the letter called it, was afoot. 2 days later, Poirot found himself aboard a train bound for the countryside, the English landscape blurring past in shades of green and gold. He wore his usual attire, a tailored black suit, a crisp white shirt, and a bow tie, his appearance as meticulous as his mind. In his valise he carried only the essentials, a change of clothes, a notebook, and a small magnifying glass, though he suspected the true tools of this case would be observation and psychology. The train rattled along, its rhythm soothing, and Poirot allowed himself a moment to imagine the scene awaiting him. A grand manor, a glittering gala, and a hidden predator lurking among the guests. The thought brought a faint smile to his lips. Upon arriving at the small village station, Poirot was met by a chauffeur in a sleek black Rolls-Royce sent by Lord Ashford. The drive to Ravenwood Manor wound through rolling hills, the road flanked by ancient oaks whose branches formed a canopy overhead. The manor itself emerged like a vision from a Gothic novel, a sprawling stone edifice with ivy-clad walls, towering turrets, and windows that gleamed like eyes in the afternoon sun. As the car rolled to a stop, Poirot adjusted his hat and stepped out, his senses alert. The air carried the scent of roses from the manicured gardens, and the distant sound of a fountain added a serene note to the scene. Yet beneath the beauty, Poirot felt the undercurrent of something amiss. A butler, stiff and formal, greeted him at the entrance. "Monsieur Poirot, welcome to Ravenwood Manor," he said. His voice clipped. "Lord Ashford awaits you in the drawing room." Poirot nodded, noting the butler's impeccable posture and the faint tremor in his hand as he took Poirot's coat. A nervous servant, perhaps? Or one privy to secrets? The drawing room was a study in opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from a vaulted ceiling, their light dancing across polished wood paneling and velvet drapes. Lord Reginald Ashford stood by a marble fireplace, a tall man in his 50s with silver hair and a commanding presence. His eyes, sharp and assessing, met Poirot's with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, extending a hand. "Your reputation is legendary. I confess, I was surprised to receive your acceptance. I don't recall sending an invitation." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Indeed, my lord, the invitation was not from you, but it spoke of a matter most intriguing. A gala, a game, and a master of deception. I could not resist." He produced the letter, watching Ashford's face closely. The man's brow furrowed. As he read, his fingers tightening on the paper. "This is not my hand," Ashford said, his voice low. "Nor do I know of any friend who would write such a thing. But you are here, and the gala is tomorrow. Perhaps you'll uncover the meaning of this riddle." Poirot inclined his head. "I intend to, my lord. Tell me, who else will attend?" "This gala?" Ashford gestured to a side table, where a guest list lay among decanters of brandy and fine crystal. "A small but distinguished group," he said. "My wife, Lady Eleanor, of course. Our son, Victor, who's recently returned from Paris. Clara Duval, the actress, she's quite the sensation in London. Gordon Blake, a financier with a knack for investments. And Dr. Evelyn Hart, a professor of some renown, though she keeps to herself." Poirot committed the names to memory, his mind already sorting them into categories. Motives, opportunities, secrets. "And the Emerald Star?" he asked, his tone casual. "It will be displayed, oui?" Ashford hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, during the gala. It's locked in my study for now, under guard. You think this game involves the necklace?" "Perhaps," Poirot said, his eyes gleaming. "Or perhaps it is merely the opening act." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lady Eleanor Ashford, a woman of striking beauty with auburn hair and a smile that seemed practiced. Her emerald green dress shimmered as she moved, and Poirot noted the way her eyes flicked to the letter in her husband's hand before settling on him. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice warm but measured. "What a delight. I hope our little gathering won't bore a man of your talents." "On the contrary, madame," Poirot replied, bowing slightly. "I find the prospect most stimulating, as—" Lady Eleanor led him to a guest suite. Poirot's mind raced. The letter's sender knew of the gala, the Emerald Star, and his own reputation. The chameleon, as he now thought of the mysterious friend, was someone with access and audacity. Was it one of the guests Ashford had named? Or someone else, hiding in plain sight? The guest suite was as lavish as the rest of the manor, with a four-poster bed, a writing desk, and a window overlooking the gardens. Poirot unpacked his valise, placing the magnifying glass in his pocket. He stood by the window, watching the grounds below. A figure moved near the rose bushes, a young man, tall and lean, with a restless gait. Victor Ashford, perhaps. Poirot filed the observation away. Dinner that evening was a formal affair, held in a dining hall adorned with portraits of Ashford ancestors. Poirot, seated between Clara Duval and Dr. Evelyn Hart, observed his fellow guests with keen interest. Clara, a blonde with a radiant smile, spoke animatedly of her latest role in a West End play, her laughter filling the room. Yet Poirot noticed her hands, which fidgeted with her napkin when she thought no one was watching. Dr. Hart, by contrast, was reserved, her gray hair pulled into a severe bun, her eyes darting to the others as if cataloging their every word. Gordon Blake, the financier, exuded confidence, his loud voice dominating the conversation as he boasted of a recent deal. Victor Ashford, seated at the far end, said little, his gaze fixed on his plate. Lord Ashford raised a glass, proposing a toast to the gala. "To tomorrow," he said, "and the unveiling of the Emerald Star." The guests echoed the toast, but Poirot caught a fleeting glance between Lady Eleanor and Victor, a look that spoke of something unspoken. As the meal progressed, Poirot steered the conversation to the necklace, probing gently. "A jewel of such value," he said, addressing the table, "must attract many admirers, and perhaps those who would wish to possess it." Clara laughed, a touch too brightly. "Oh, Monsieur Poirot, you make it sound so sinister. It's just a pretty bauble." "Pretty, yes," Dr. Hart said quietly, "but objects of beauty often inspire greed." Blake snorted. "Greed? It's ambition, my dear professor. The world runs on it." Poirot smiled, his eyes never leaving their faces. Each guest, he knew, was a piece in the puzzle. The chameleon was among them or watching from the shadows. He would need to be vigilant, his senses sharp to catch the first hint of their move. After dinner, the guests retired to the drawing room for coffee and brandy. Poirot excused himself, claiming a need for fresh air, and slipped into the gardens. The night was cool, the stars bright above the manor. He walked slowly, his cane tapping the gravel path, his mind turning over the letter's words. A master of deception. The chameleon, he suspected, was not merely a T. Chapter 2. The Gathering of Suspects. Hercule Poirot stood at the threshold of Ravenwood Manor's grand dining hall, his keen eyes sweeping over the opulent scene before him. The room was a symphony of elegance. A long mahogany table gleamed under, the light of 3 crystal chandeliers, their prisms scattering rainbows across the walls. Silver cutlery glinted beside bone china plates, and the air carried the faint aroma of roasted pheasant and fine wine. The guests, dressed in evening attire, were already seated, their voices a low hum of polite conversation punctuated by the occasional clink of glass. Poirot adjusted his bow tie, ensuring it sat perfectly, and stepped forward, his polished shoes silent on the thick Persian rug. The butler, a gaunt man named Withers, had announced his arrival with a deferential bow, and now all eyes turned to the diminutive detective. Lord Reginald Ashford rose from the head of the table, his silver hair catching the light. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his station, "we are honored to have you join us. Please take your seat." He gestured to a chair between 2 guests, a radiant blonde in a shimmering sapphire gown and a severe-looking woman with gray hair pulled into a tight bun. Poirot inclined his head, his mustache twitching in acknowledgement, and took his place, his senses already attuned to the undercurrents in the room. To his left sat Clara Duval, the actress whose name adorned London's theatre marquees. Her smile was dazzling, her blue eyes sparkling with practiced charm, but Poirot noted the slight tension in her fingers as she toyed with a pearl necklace. To his right was Dr. Evelyn Hart, the reclusive professor, whose sharp gaze seemed to dissect the room with clinical precision. Across the table, Gordon Blake, the financier, leaned back in his chair, his broad shoulders straining against his tailored jacket as he recounted a recent business triumph with booming confidence. Beside him, Victor Ashford, the heir to the IEBI estate, sat with a brooding air, his dark eyes fixed on his wineglass. Lady Eleanor Ashford, at the opposite end from her husband, presided over the table with a serene smile, though Poirot caught a flicker of unease when her gaze met Victor's. The first course, a delicate consommé, was served, and Poirot seized the opportunity to observe his fellow guests. "A most splendid gathering," he said, his voice carrying a trace of his Belgian accent. "Lord Ashford, you have assembled a company most diverse. Tell me, how did such a group come to be?" Ashford chuckled, though his eyes remained guarded. "A tradition, Monsieur Poirot. The gala tomorrow is a celebration of the season, and I like to invite those who bring variety. Clara, for instance, graces us with her artistry. Gordon keeps us grounded in the ways of commerce. And Dr. Hart, well, her mind is a treasure in itself." Dr. Hart inclined her head, her expression unreadable. You're too kind, Lord Ashford. My work is merely academic, though I confess a fascination with human behavior. Her voice was low, almost monotone, but Poirot detected a spark of intensity beneath it. Clara laughed, a sound like tinkling bells. Oh, Evelyn, you make it sound so dull. You study criminals, don't you? All those dark minds, I'd rather play them on stage than dissect them. She turned to Poirot, her smile teasing. And you, Monsieur Poirot, what brings a famous detective to our little party? Chasing a mystery, perhaps? Poirot's eyes twinkled. Always, Mademoiselle Duval. The human heart, it is a mystery in itself, no? And in a place as grand as Ravenwood, who knows what secrets may hide? The table fell silent for a moment, the weight of his words settling over the guests. Victor shifted in his seat, his fingers tightening around his glass. Lady Eleanor's smile faltered, and she quickly signaled for the next course. Poirot noted each reaction, filing them away like pieces of a puzzle. The mysterious letter, with its talk of a master of deception, loomed in his mind. The chameleon, he suspected, was already among them, watching, waiting. As the meal progressed, roast pheasant with truffle sauce, followed by a delicate sorbet, Poirot steered the conversation with subtle skill, probing each guest for hints of their character. Clara spoke of her latest role, a tragic heroine in a play about betrayal, her words laced with a performer's flair, yet Poirot noticed her glances toward Gordon Blake, who seemed oblivious, engrossed in a debate with Ashford about stock markets. Dr. Hart, by contrast, said little, her responses clipped but precise, as if she were measuring every word. Victor, when pressed, mentioned his time in Paris studying art, but his tone was evasive, his eyes darting to his mother. Monsieur Victor, Poirot said, leaning forward. Paris. It is a city of inspiration. Did you find there the muse for your own creations? Victor's jaw tightened. I dabbled in painting, he said curtly. It's nothing serious, just a way to pass the time. Art is never just a pastime, Poirot replied, his tone gentle but probing. It reveals the soul, oui. Perhaps you have a masterpiece hidden away. Victor's lips twitched, but he said nothing, turning his attention to his plate. Lady Eleanor interjected smoothly. My son is modest, Monsieur Poirot. He has talent, but he prefers to keep it private. Poirot nodded, but his mind was racing. Victor's discomfort suggested more than modesty. A secret, perhaps, or a connection to the chameleon's game. He resolved to watch the young Ashford closely. The conversation shifted to the gala, and Ashford described the event in glowing terms. A masked ball, with the emerald star as the centerpiece, displayed in a glass case for all to admire. It's a family heirloom, he said, pride evident in his voice. My great-grandfather brought it from India. Its value is incalculable. Incalculable, Blake echoed, his eyes gleaming. A dangerous word in my line of work. Everything has a price, Ashford? Not everything, Lady Eleanor said softly, her gaze distant. Poirot caught the note of melancholy in her voice and wondered what lay behind it. As dessert, a rich chocolate torte was served. Poirot leaned back, his hands folded over his waistcoat. The dining hall, with its grandeur and its secrets, was a microcosm of human nature. Ambition, fear, desire, all swirling beneath the surface. He sipped his coffee, the bitter taste grounding him, and let his eyes roam the table. The chameleon, he knew, was a master of blending in, their true face hidden behind a mask of civility. But masks, Poirot thought, could be peeled away with the right questions. After dinner, the guests adjourned to the drawing room, a spacious chamber with plush armchairs and a roaring fire. Brandy was poured, and a gramophone played a soft waltz, its notes mingling with the crackle of logs. Poirot, ever observant, positioned himself near a bookcase, pretending to study the leather-bound volumes while listening to the conversations around him. Clara flirted with Blake, her laughter bright but calculated. Dr. Hart stood alone by the window, her reflection sharp against the dark glass. Victor and his mother spoke in low tones by the fire, their words inaudible, but their body. Language tense. Poirot approached Clara, offering a compliment on her gown. "It is most striking, mademoiselle. The sapphire, it matches your eyes, no?" She blushed, twirling a strand of hair. "You're too kind, Monsieur Poirot. But tell me, do you ever relax? Or are you always detecting?" He chuckled. "The mind, it does not rest. But I find pleasure in observation. For instance, I observe that you are most attentive to Monsieur Blake. A friend, perhaps." Her smile tightened. "Oh, Gordon? He's amusing in his way, but I'm an actress. I'm attentive to everyone." She excused herself, her departure a touch too hasty. Poirot turned to Dr. Hart, who had not moved from her spot by the window. "You are a scholar of the mind, madame," he said. "What do you make of this gathering? So many personalities, so many possibilities." She met his gaze, her eyes like steel. "People are predictable, Monsieur Poirot. They wear their motives like badges if you know where to look. Greed, fear, love, they drive us all." "And deception?" he asked, his tone light. "Is that not also a motive?" Her lips curved slightly. "Deception is a tool, not a motive. It's what one does to achieve their ends." Poirot nodded, filing away her words. Dr. Hart's intellect was formidable, but was it merely academic or something more sinister? He moved on, engaging Blake in a discussion of finance, though the man's bluster revealed little beyond his ego. Victor, meanwhile, slipped out of the room, and Poirot noted his absence with interest. As the evening drew to a close, Poirot retired to his suite, his mind a whirl of impressions. The letter, the guests, the emerald star, all were threads in a tapestry he had yet to unravel. He sat at the writing desk, his notebook open, and began jotting down observations. Clara's nervous hands, Victor's evasiveness, Dr. Hart's cryptic remarks, Lady Eleanor's unease, Blake's ambition. Somewhere among them the chameleon hid, their identity cloaked in charm or reserve. He crossed to the window, gazing out at the darkened gardens. The moon cast shadows across the lawn, and for a moment he thought he saw a figure moving near, the fountain. He leaned closer, but the figure vanished, leaving only the ripple of water in its wake, a trick of the light perhaps, or a sign that the chameleon was already playing their game. Poirot returned to his notebook, his pen moving swiftly. The gala tomorrow would be the stage for the chameleon's next move, he was certain. And he, Hercule Poirot, would be ready, not just to watch, but to act. The little gray cells, they were awake, and they would not rest until the master of deception was unmasked. Chapter 3. The First Clue. The grand ballroom of Ravenwood Manor shimmered with anticipation, its vast expanse transformed into a stage for the gala. Crystal chandeliers hung like frozen waterfalls, their light refracting across polished marble, floors and gilded walls adorned with ancestral portraits. Long tables draped in white linen bore silver candelabras and bouquets of roses, their scent mingling with the crisp tang of champagne. Guests in masked finery swirled through the room, their laughter and murmurs rising above the strains of a string quartet playing a lively waltz. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed in a black tailcoat and bow tie, stood near a marble pillar, his green eyes scanning the crowd. His mustache, perfectly symmetrical, betrayed no hint of the alertness that coursed through his mind. The gala was in full swing, and somewhere in this glittering throng the chameleon was poised to strike. Poirot sipped a glass of sparkling water, preferring clarity to the champagne that flowed freely. The mysterious letter that had summoned him to Ravenwood Manor weighed heavily on his thoughts. Its cryptic promise of a grand performance and a master of deception suggested a crime was imminent, and the emerald star, Lord Ashford's prized necklace, seemed the obvious target. Yet Poirot's instincts told him the chameleon's ambitions might extend beyond mere theft. The murder of Gordon Blake, the financier, still unsolved, loomed in his mind, a dark prelude to whatever act would unfold tonight. He moved through the crowd, his steps measured, his cane tapping lightly against the floor. The masks, elaborate creations of feathers, silk, and gold, added a layer of intrigue, concealing identities and intentions. Lord Reginald Ashford, recognizable by his commanding stature despite his silver mask, mingled with guests near the center of the room. Lady Eleanor, her auburn hair cascading beneath a jeweled mask, glided among the attendees, her smile gracious but strained. Victor Ashford, masked in black velvet, stood apart, his posture tense as he surveyed the room. Clara Duval, the actress, was a vision in sapphire silk, her laughter drawing admirers like moths to a flame. Dr. Evelyn Hart, her gray hair partially hidden by a plain domino mask, lingered near a buffet table, her eyes darting with quiet intensity. Poirot's attention shifted to the focal point of the gala, a glass case on a velvet-draped pedestal illuminated by a spotlight. Within it rested the emerald star, its green gems blazing with an almost unearthly light. A guard, broad-shouldered and stern, stood nearby, but Poirot noted the man's distracted glances toward the dancers. A vulnerability, perhaps, for a skilled thief. He circled the case, his magnifying glass discreetly in hand, examining the lock. It was modern, intricate, but not impervious. A faint scratch on the glass caught his eye, a hairline mark, barely visible. He filed the observation away, his mind already weaving possibilities. The music paused, and Lord Ashford stepped onto a small dais, raising a glass. "My friends," he boomed, his voice carrying over the crowd. "Tonight we celebrate not only beauty but legacy. The Emerald Star, a treasure of my family, is yours to admire. Let us toast to its brilliance and to the joys of this evening." The guests cheered, glasses clinking, but Poirot's gaze remained fixed on the necklace. Something about the moment felt staged, as if the chameleon were watching, waiting for the perfect instant to act. As the dancing resumed, Poirot positioned himself near a set of French doors leading to a terrace, offering a vantage point over both the crowd and the necklace. He exchanged pleasantries with a passing guest, a local magistrate whose mask did little to hide his pompous demeanor, but his focus never wavered. Clara Duval approached, her mask tilted playfully. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice teasing, "you're not dancing. Surely a man of your charm doesn't prefer to stand alone." Poirot smiled, bowing slightly. "The dance, mademoiselle, is not always on the floor. I find the observation of others to be a waltz of its own." She laughed, but her eyes flicked toward the emerald star. "You're watching that necklace like a hawk. Do you think someone would dare steal it with all these people here?" Audacity, point significance of the letter. He approached Lady Eleanor, who stood near a floral arrangement, her mask now resting on a table. "Madame," he said, his tone gentle, "the gala, it is a triumph. Yet I sense you are not entirely at ease. Is there something you wish to share?" She hesitated, her fingers brushing the stem of her champagne glass. "You're perceptive, Monsieur Poirot. It's nothing specific, just a feeling. This necklace, it attracts attention, not all of it kind." Poirot nodded, his eyes softening. "Attention, yes, and perhaps danger. If you know of anything, even the smallest detail, it may aid me." She shook her head, her smile returning. "You're kind to worry. Enjoy the evening, monsieur." She moved away, leaving Poirot with the distinct impression that she was guarding a secret. The evening wore on, the music growing livelier, the guests' laughter louder as the champagne flowed. Poirot maintained his vigil, his senses attuned to every movement. At 10:30, a commotion erupted near the pedestal. A woman screamed, a sharp, piercing sound that silenced the quartet. Poirot pushed through the crowd, his cane forgotten, as he reached the glass case. The emerald star was gone. The lock, he noted, was intact, but the glass bore a fresh, circular cut, precise and professional. The guard stood frozen, his face pale, as guests gasped and whispered. Lord Ashford stormed, forward, his mask discarded. "This is outrageous," he bellowed. "The necklace and stolen under our noses." He turned to the guard, who stammered apologies, claiming he'd seen nothing. Lady Eleanor appeared at her husband's side, her face ashen. Victor lingered, at the edge of the crowd, his expression unreadable. Clara clutched her pearls, her eyes wide with shock, or was it feigned? Dr. Hart stood apart, her arms crossed, observing the chaos with an almost clinical detachment. Poirot knelt by the case, his magnifying glass in hand. The cut was flawless, the work of a skilled hand, but his attention was drawn to a small object, caught in the velvet draping, a scrap of paper no larger than a postage stamp. He retrieved it with a handkerchief, careful not to touch it directly. The paper bore a single line written in the same elegant script as the letter that had summoned him. The face unseen watches still. His heart quickened. The chameleon had struck, and this was their taunt, a clue left deliberately for him. He slipped the paper into his pocket, his mind racing. The theft had occurred in a room full of people, yet no one had seen the thief. A disguise, perhaps, or a distraction? He recalled the scream, a woman's voice, but whose? It had drawn every eye, including the guards, away from the case. Poirot rose, addressing the crowd with calm authority. Mesdames et messieurs, remain calm. The thief is clever but not invisible. I, Hercule Poirot, will find them. His words steadied the room, though whispers of panic lingered. He approached Ashford, who was conferring with the guard. "Milord, may I inspect the study where the necklace was kept before tonight?" Ashford nodded, his face grim. "Of course. This way." He led Poirot through a side door, the guests parting to let them pass. The study was a smaller room, lined with bookshelves and dominated by a heavy oak desk. A safe stood in one corner, its door slightly ajar. Ashford opened it fully, revealing an empty velvet-lined interior. "It was here until this afternoon," he said. "I moved it to the case myself, with Withers and the guard present." Poirot examined the safe, noting no signs of tampering. The lock was intact, the combination undisturbed. "And who knew the combination?" he asked. "Only myself and Eleanor," Ashford replied. "And Withers, of course. He's been with us for years." Poirot nodded, his mind cataloging the information. He returned to the ballroom where the guests were now huddled in groups, their masks discarded in the wake of the theft. He sought out the butler, Withers, who stood near the French doors, his face drawn. "Monsieur Withers," Poirot said, "you were present when the necklace was moved. Did you notice anything unusual?" Withers shook his head, his voice steady, but soft. "No, sir. Everything was as it should be. The case was locked, the guard posted. I was serving drinks when the scream came." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "And the scream? Who did it come from?" "I couldn't say, sir. It was sudden. From the crowd." Poirot thanked him and moved on, his gaze sweeping the room. Clara was now speaking with Victor, her hand on his arm, her expression earnest. Dr. Hart had retreated to a corner, her notebook open as she scribbled something. Lady Eleanor was consoling a distraught guest, her composure restored but her eyes haunted. The chameleon, Poirot knew, was still here, blending seamlessly into the chaos they had created. He slipped the scrap of paper from his pocket, rereading the message. "The face unseen watches still." The phrase echoed the letter's tone, its theatricality a signature of the chameleon's mind. A face unseen, a disguise, perhaps, or a metaphor for their ability to go unnoticed. Poirot's thoughts turned to the guests. Clara's theatrical flair, Victor's evasiveness, Dr. Hart's detachment, Lady Eleanor's unease, all were possibilities. Even Ashford himself, with his commanding presence, could be playing a deeper game. As the guests began to disperse, summoned by Ashford to await the arrival of the local police, Poirot lingered by the empty case. He traced the circular cut with his finger, his mind reconstructing the theft. The scream had been the key, a deliberate. Chapter 4. The disguise begins. The morning after the gala dawned gray and heavy, with clouds hanging low over Ravenwood Manor, casting the sprawling estate in a muted light that seemed to mirror the unease within its walls. Hercule Poirot stood before a full-length mirror in his guest suite, his nimble fingers adjusting a garish red cravat that clashed spectacularly with the mustard-yellow waistcoat he had chosen for his new persona. The reflection staring back was not the fastidious detective known for his impeccable taste and polished demeanor, but Monsieur Henri Dupont, a flamboyant French art dealer with a penchant for loud colors and an exaggerated accent. Poirot's mustache, now hidden beneath a slightly askew false one, was deliberately less refined, its ends curling with a touch of theatrical excess. He tilted his head, practicing a high-pitched chuckle that grated even on his own ears, and adjusted the thick spectacles that magnified his green eyes to a comically earnest degree. The disguise, though absurd to his refined sensibilities, was perfect for its purpose, to lower the guards of Ravenwood's guests and draw the chameleon into a false sense of security. Poirot's suite, with its heavy velvet drapes and ornate furniture, was a sanctuary of quiet amid the manor's growing tension. The theft of the Emerald Star the previous night had set the household abuzz, with servants whispering in corners and guests exchanging wary glances over breakfast. The local police, summoned by Lord Ashford, were due to arrive later that morning, but Poirot knew their methods, blunt and methodical, would do little to unmask a criminal as cunning as the chameleon. The scrap of paper he had found by the glass case bearing the words, "The face unseen watches still," lay on his writing desk, its elegant script a taunt that echoed the mysterious letter that had brought him here. The chameleon was playing a game, and Poirot intended to meet them on their own terms, not as the renowned detective but as Henri Dupont, a bumbling opportunist who might tempt the criminal to reveal themselves. He slipped a small notebook into his pocket, its pages already filled with observations from the gala, Clara Duval's nervous fidgeting, Victor Ashford's brooding silence, Dr. Evelyn Hart's detached scrutiny, Lady Eleanor's fleeting unease, and Gordon Blake's absence, his murder now overshadowed by the theft. The chameleon, Poirot suspected, was not merely a thief but a master manipulator, orchestrating events to sow chaos and distraction. To catch them, he would need to blend into their world, observe their reactions, and provoke a misstep. The disguise of Monsieur Dupont was his first move in this delicate dance. Poirot descended the grand staircase, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm, his posture slightly stooped to complete the transformation. The dining hall was quieter than the previous night. The guests gathered around a smaller table for breakfast. Lord Ashford sat at the head, his face drawn, a newspaper open before him with headlines speculating about the theft. Lady Eleanor, in a pale gray dress, poured tea with a steady hand, though her eyes darted to the door as if expecting unwelcome visitors. Victor slouched in his chair, picking at a plate of eggs, while Clara, radiant even in the morning light, chatted animatedly with a new guest, a local magistrate named Sir Henry Walsh, whose pompous demeanor Poirot had noted the night before. Dr. Hart sat apart, a book open beside her plate, her pen scratching notes in the margins. "Ah, bonjour, mes amis," Poirot exclaimed, his voice pitched higher and tinged with a theatrical lilt. He swept into the room, his arms spread wide, the red cravat flapping like a flag. "Henri Dupont, dealer in the finest arts, at your service. What a morning, no? Though I hear there is a tragedy, a jewel lost, quel malheur." The guests turned, their expressions a mix of amusement and confusion. Clara's laugh was immediate, her eyes sparkling. "Monsieur Dupont, what a colorful entrance. Are you here for the gala, or did you hear about our little drama?" Poirot beamed, adjusting his spectacles. "The gala, mademoiselle. But now, I find myself intrigued by this theft. A jewel so sparkling, poof, gone. It is a story for the ages, no?" He took a seat beside her, noting the way her fingers tightened around her teacup. Lord Ashford raised an eyebrow. "Monsieur Dupont, I wasn't aware you'd been invited. Your arrival is unexpected." "Mais oui, milord," Poirot said, waving a hand. "A last-minute decision, you see. My friend in Paris, he speaks of Ravenwood, of its treasures, and I say, Henri, you must go. And here I am, to admire, and perhaps to trade." He winked, his tone conspiratorial, and saw Ashford's expression soften, though suspicion lingered. Lady Eleanor smiled politely. "We're delighted to have you, Monsieur Dupont, though I fear our hospitality is marred by last night's events. Marde, non, non, Poirot exclaimed. It is a spice, this mystery. Tell me, the Emerald Star, it was magnificent. We? Who would dare to take such a thing? Victor snorted, speaking for the first time. Someone bold or desperate. His eyes met Poirot's briefly, then flicked away, a shadow crossing his face. Dr. Hart looked up from her book, her gaze sharp. Boldness is a trait of the cunning, Monsieur Dupin. A thief like that plans every detail. Poirot nodded, feigning enthusiasm. Exactement. A mastermind, perhaps. I, Henri Dupin, admire such artistry. He leaned forward, his voice dropping. But tell me, madame, you study such minds, no? What kind of person steals under so many noses? Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Someone who blends in. Someone who knows how to be seen and unseen at once. Poirot's heart quickened, but he maintained his jovial facade. Dr. Hart's words echoed his own thoughts about the chameleon. A chameleon, after all, changed its colors to match its surroundings. He filed her comment away, turning to Clara. And you, mademoiselle, a star of the stage, you must know of disguise, of playing a role. Is it not thrilling to become another? Clara's laugh was lighter this time, but her eyes flickered. It's my trade, Monsieur Dupin, but I prefer my disguises on stage, not in real life. Stealing jewels, far too stressful. The conversation shifted as servants cleared the plates, but Poirot's mind was alight with observations. Clara's charm was a shield, Victor's reticence a mask, and Dr. Hart's intellect a potential weapon. Lady Eleanor, meanwhile, excused, herself to speak with Withers, the butler, her movements graceful but hurried. Ashford remained absorbed in his newspaper, though Poirot noted the way his fingers drummed the table, a sign of unease. After breakfast, Poirot, as Dupin, wandered the manor's halls, his exaggerated gait drawing curious glances from the staff. He paused by a portrait of a stern Ashford ancestor, pretending to admire the brushwork while listening to two maids whispering about the theft. They say the ghost of old Lady Ashford took it. One giggled. Or maybe it was that actress. She's got sticky fingers, I wager. Poirot smiled to himself. Gossip, though unreliable, often held kernels of truth. He made his way to the library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound books and heavy oak furniture. The French doors leading to the terrace were slightly ajar, letting in a cool breeze. Poirot closed them, noting a faint smudge on the handle, a trace of powder, perhaps makeup. He filed the detail away, his mind turning to the scream that had distracted the gala's guests. A woman's voice, sharp and sudden, had drawn every eye from the Emerald Star's case. Clara? Lady Eleanor? Or someone else entirely? He sat at a writing desk, pulling out his notebook to jot down his thoughts. The chameleon's note, the face unseen, watches still, suggested a penchant for theatrics, a love of the game. The theft had been bold, executed in a crowded room, yet no one had seen the thief. A disguise, Poirot concluded, was likely. But whose? Clara, with her actress's skill? Victor, with his artistic background? Or Dr. Hart, whose knowledge of human behavior could mask a criminal mind? Poirot's musings were interrupted by the arrival of Sir Henry Walsh, the magistrate, who strode into the library with an air of self-importance. Monsieur Dupin, he said, eyeing Poirot's garish attire. I hear you're an art dealer. A pity you arrived amid such chaos. The police will be here soon. Inspector Japp, I believe. He'll sort this mess out. Poirot suppressed a smile at the mention of Japp, his old friend from Scotland Yard. Mais oui, Sir Henry. The police, they are most efficient. But tell me, you were at the gala. Did you see anything unusual? Walsh puffed out his chest. I was busy conversing with Lord Ashford. A scream, a commotion, and then the necklace was gone. Damned clever, if you ask me. But no one leaves Ravenwood with that jewel, not under my watch. Poirot nodded, his mind noting Walsh's bluster. A man eager to assert authority often missed the details. He excused himself, claiming a need to inspect the manor's art collection, and slipped into the corridor. His true destination was the ballroom, where the empty glass case stood as a silent testament to the chameleon's audacity. The room was quieter now, The chandeliers dimmed, the roses beginning to wilt. Poirot approached the pedestal, his magnifying, glass in hand. The circular cut in the glass was precise, likely made with a diamond-tipped tool. He examined the floor, finding a faint scuff mark, a shoe, perhaps, or a dropped tool. Nearby, a single rose petal lay crushed, its edge torn. He pocketed it, his mind racing. The chameleon had been here, in this spot, and they had left traces, however small. As he straightened, he heard Footstie's hand. "Monsieur Dupont," he said, his voice low. "You're very curious about that case." Chapter 5. A murder in the night. The night was heavy with silence, the kind that settles over a grand house like Ravenwood Manor when its inhabitants are lulled into a false sense of security. Hercule Poirot, still cloaked in the persona of Monsieur. Henri Dupont stood by the window of his guest suite, the garish red cravat loosened but still draped around his neck. The false mustache itched slightly, but he resisted the urge to adjust it, his mind too occupied with the events of the day. The theft of the Emerald Star had set the manor abuzz, and the arrival of Inspector Japp and his constables that afternoon had done little to quell the undercurrent of tension. Poirot's green eyes, magnified by the thick spectacles of his disguise, scanned the darkened gardens below, where moonlight glinted off the fountain's surface. The chameleon's taunting note, "The face unseen watches still," lay on his writing desk, its words a constant reminder of the game at hand. The manor had settled into an uneasy quiet after the police's initial inquiries. Japp, with his familiar brusqueness, had questioned the guests and staff, focusing on the mechanics of the theft. The cut glass, the distracted guard, the scream that had drawn every eye. Yet Poirot, as Dupont, had lingered in the background, offering only vague comments about art and beauty, his bumbling demeanor deflecting suspicion. He had observed Japp's frustration, the inspector's methodical approach no match for the chameleon's cunning. The scrap of paper with its cryptic message was a clue Poirot had not shared, preferring to keep it close until he could decipher its full meaning. He turned from the window, his cane tapping softly as he crossed to the desk. His notebook was, open, filled with meticulous notes. Clara Duval's nervous glances, Victor Ashford's evasiveness, Dr. Evelyn Hart's cryptic intellect, Lady Eleanor's guarded composure, and Lord Ashford's barely concealed anger. The chameleon, he was certain, was among them, their identity hidden behind a mask of civility. The theft was bold, but Poirot suspected it was merely the opening act in a larger performance, one that might escalate to something far darker. Sharp cry shattered the silence, piercing the night like a blade. Poirot froze, his senses instantly alert. The sound came from within the manor, muffled but unmistakable. A scream of shock, not pain. He slipped the notebook into his pocket, adjusted his spectacles, and hurried into the corridor, his cane abandoned in favor of speed. The hallway was dimly lit, gas lamps casting flickering shadows on the oak-paneled walls. Other doors opened, and voices, alarmed, confused, filled the air. Lady Eleanor appeared, her silk robe hastily tied, her auburn hair disheveled. "What was that?" she demanded, her voice trembling. Poirot, as Dupont, adopted a flustered tone. "Mon Dieu, madame, a scream, no? We must see." He followed, her down the corridor, noting the rapid patter of footsteps from other rooms. Victor emerged, his shirt untucked, his eyes wild. Clara Duval, wrapped in a shawl, joined them, her face pale beneath her makeup. Dr. Hart was last, her expression calm but her eyes sharp, as if she were already analyzing the scene. The group converged on the library, where the scream had originated. The heavy oak door stood ajar, and a faint light spilled into the corridor. Poirot pushed it open, his heart quickening as he took in the scene. Gordon Blake, the financier, lay sprawled on the floor near a leather armchair, his face contorted, in a grimace of pain. A glass of brandy lay shattered beside him, its contents pooling on the rug. The air carried a faint, bitter scent, almonds perhaps, or something more sinister. Withers, the butler, stood frozen near a bookshelf, his hands clasped tightly, his face ashen. I found him, he stammered. I came to check the windows and he was just there. Poirot knelt beside Blake, his movements deliberate despite the chaos around him. He pressed 2 fingers to the man's neck, finding no pulse. The financier's eyes were wide, his lips tinged blue. Poison, Poirot suspected, his mind flashing to the bitter scent. He scanned the body, noting a faint smudge of powder on Blake's cuff, white, like theatrical makeup. His eyes darted to the shattered glass, then to the decanter on a nearby table. Mon Dieu, he murmured, maintaining his DuPont persona. This is most tragic. Poor Monsieur Blake, Lady Eleanor gasped, clutching Victor's arm. Poisoned? She whispered. In our home? Victor pulled away, his jaw tight. Who would do this? First the necklace, now this? Clara's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. It's horrible. He was fine at dinner, laughing, talking. Her voice trailed off, and Poirot noted the tremor in her hands, though, whether from fear or guilt, he could not yet tell. Dr. Hart stepped forward, her voice steady. We mustn't touch anything. The police will need to see this exactly as it is. She knelt briefly, peering at Blake's face without touching him. Cyanide, perhaps. The symptoms suggest it. Poirot's eyes narrowed, though he hid his interest behind a flustered gesture. Madame, you know of such things, you are most learned. I study human behavior, she replied coolly, and its consequences. Poison is a coward's weapon, but effective. Lord Ashford burst into the room, his face flushed with anger. What the devil is going on? He roared, taking in the scene. Blake, dead? This is madness. He turned to Withers. You found him? Speak, man. Withers nodded, his voice barely audible. I came to secure the library, sir. The window was open, and I saw him like this. Poirot moved to the window, his magnifying glass discreetly in hand. The latch was undone and a faint breeze stirred the curtains. He examined the sill, finding another smudge of white powder, identical to that on Blake's cuff. A clue, perhaps, or a deliberate misdirection. He turned back to the room, his mind racing. The chameleon had escalated their game, from theft to murder, and the timing suggested a purpose beyond chaos. Blake, with his brash confidence and financial dealings, might have known something, or been a threat. Inspector Japp arrived within the hour, his face grim as he surveyed the scene. Poirot, he said under his breath, recognizing the detective despite the disguise. What are you playing at with this get-up? Poirot winked, his voice low. A little game, mon ami. Monsieur Dupont sees what Poirot cannot. Trust me. He stepped back, allowing Japp to take charge, but his eyes never left the guests. Japp questioned each in turn, his notebook filling with alibis. Lady Eleanor had been in her room, Victor in the billiard room, Clara in her suite, Dr. Hart reading in her study. All claimed to have been alone, their stories unverifiable. As Japp examined the body, Poirot as Dupont wandered the library, his bumbling demeanor masking his scrutiny. He paused by a bookshelf, where a volume of Shakespeare lay slightly askew. He pulled it out, revealing a hidden compartment, a small recess containing a vial of clear liquid, stoppered with a cork. He pocketed it carefully, his heart quickening. Poison, perhaps, or another of the chameleon's tricks. He approached Clara, who stood near the fireplace, her shawl clutched tightly. Mademoiselle, he said, his tone sympathetic, this is most distressing. You knew Monsieur Blake well, no? She nodded, her eyes glistening. He was charming, ambitious. I can't believe anyone would do this. Poirot tilted his head, his spectacles glinting. Ambition, it can make enemies, oui. Did he speak of any troubles? Clara hesitated, then shook her head. No, nothing specific, just business talk. He was always so confident. Her voice wavered, and Poirot noted the way her fingers twisted. The shawl? A sign of nerves or something more? He moved on to Victor, who leaned against a wall, his face pale. Monsieur Victor, a terrible night, Poirot said, his voice dripping with faux concern. You were in the billiard room, you say? Alone? Victor's eyes flicked up, sharp and defensive. Yes, I like to play at night, clears my head. Bien sûr, Poirot said, nodding. But such a scream. It must have startled you, no? I didn't hear it at first, Victor said quickly. The billiard room's far from here. Poirot smiled, his mind noting the inconsistency. The scream had been loud, piercing. Even in the billiard room it should have been audible. He filed the detail away, turning to Dr. Hart, who stood by Jap, offering quiet observations about the body. Madame, your knowledge, it is most impressive, he said. This cyanide, you think it was in the brandy? Possibly, she said, her voice even. The smell suggests it, but we'll need a chemist to confirm. Poirot nodded, his mind racing. Dr. Hart's calm was unnerving, her knowledge too precise. Was she merely a scholar, or was she playing a deeper game? He glanced at Lady Eleanor, who stood with Ashford, her hand on his arm. Her composure had returned, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of fear. Ashford, meanwhile, was barking orders at Withers, demanding a search of the grounds. As the police cordoned off the library, Poirot slipped into the corridor, his thoughts a whirl. The smudge of powder, the vial, the open window, all were pieces of a puzzle. But the chameleon's motive remained elusive. Blake's death was no random act. It was targeted, precise. Had he known something about the theft? Or was he a pawn, sacrificed to deepen the chaos? Poirot returned to his suite, locking the door behind him. He removed the false mustache, wincing at the adhesive, and sat at the desk, the vial and the chameleon's note before him. The powder, he suspected, was theatrical makeup, a clue to the chameleon's methods. The vial would need testing, but its discovery in TIA. Chapter 6. The chameleon's taunt, the dawn broke over Ravenwood Manor with a pallor that seemed to seep into its very stones, the gray light filtering through the tall windows of Hercule Poirot's guest suite. He stood at his writing desk, still, clad in the garish attire of Monsieur Henri Dupont, though the false mustache lay discarded beside a small mirror. The red cravat, now slightly crumpled, hung loosely around his neck, and his mustard-yellow waistcoat was unbuttoned, a rare concession to the hour's demands. In his hand he held a new note, delivered under his door in the night's waning hours. Its elegant script matched the previous messages, its words a fresh challenge from the chameleon. You chase shadows, monsieur, but the chameleon shifts with the light. Another move is made. What will you see? The paper was heavy, its edges crisp, and Poirot's green eyes, no longer magnified by Dupont's spectacles, gleamed with a quiet intensity. The murder of Gordon Blake and the theft of the Emerald Star were but opening gambits. This note confirmed the chameleon's game was far from over. Poirot's suite was a haven of order amidst the manor's growing disarray. The four-poster bed was neatly made, the velvet drapes drawn back to reveal the mist-shrouded gardens below. His notebook lay open, its pages dense with observations, the smudge of theatrical makeup in the library, the vial of clear liquid hidden behind the Shakespeare volume, Victor Ashford's questionable alibi, Clara Duval's nervous gestures, Dr. Evelyn Hart's unsettling calm, and Lady Eleanor's veiled fear. The chameleon's latest taunt suggested confidence, perhaps arrogance, a belief that they could outwit even Hercule Poirot. But arrogance, Poirot knew, was a crack in the armor, and he intended to exploit it. He adjusted his cravat, resuming the Dupont persona with a practiced flourish, and descended to the dining hall. The atmosphere was somber. The guests gathered around a table set with a modest breakfast of toast, eggs, and tea. Lord Reginald Ashford sat at the head, his face etched with exhaustion, his fingers drumming a restless rhythm. Lady Eleanor, pale but composed, poured tea with mechanical precision. Victor slouched in his chair, his eyes shadowed, while Clara, her usual radiance dimmed, picked at a piece of toast. Dr. Hart, as ever, sat apart, her notebook open, her pen moving with deliberate strokes. Inspector Japp, who had stayed the night, stood by a window conferring with a constable in hushed tones. Poirot entered with a theatrical sweep, his voice high and effusive. Bonjour, mes amis. What a morning, non? Though I hear the night was most eventful. Poor Monsieur Blake. Quelle tragédie. He took a seat beside Clara, noting the way her hands trembled as she reached for her teacup. Ashford's jaw tightened. Monsieur Dupont, your cheer is out of place. A man is dead, and my necklace is still missing. This is no time for frivolity. Poirot's spectacles glinted as he leaned forward, his tone earnest but calculated. Pardonnez-moi, my lord. I mean no disrespect. But in my trade, art and tragedy, they are close cousins, oui? I only wish to help, to see what my poor eyes can find. Clara managed a weak smile. You're an optimist, Monsieur Dupont. I wish I could be so buoyant. After last night, I barely slept. Mademoiselle, the heart, it is heavy, Poirot said, patting her hand. But tell me, you were close to Monsieur Blake, no? Did he speak of enemies, perhaps? Someone who wished him harm? Her eyes flickered and she shook her head. No, nothing like that. Gordon was ambitious but well-liked. I can't imagine who'd do this. Poirot nodded, his mind noting the hesitation in her voice. He turned to Victor, who was staring at his plate. And you, Monsieur Victor? You were in the billiard room, you said. Did you hear nothing of this tragedy? Victor's head snapped up, his eyes sharp. I told the inspector I was alone. The billiard room's at the other end of the manor. I didn't hear the scream until later. Bien sûr, Poirot said, his tone soothing. But such a night, it unsettles us all. Perhaps you saw someone in the corridors, no? Victor's fingers tightened around his fork. No. No one. He pushed his chair back and stood. I need some air. He strode out, leaving a heavy silence in his wake. Dr. Hart looked up from her notebook, her gaze piercing. He's shaken, she said, her voice low. Grief manifests differently in the young. Poirot tilted his head, his Dupont persona in full display. Madame, you see so much. Your studies, they must reveal the secrets of the soul, oui? She met his gaze, unflinching. The soul is no mystery, Monsieur Dupont. It's a pattern of behaviors, predictable if you know the signs. Fear, guilt, ambition, they all leave traces. Poirot's heart quickened, but he maintained his bumbling facade. Fascinant. And this murderer? What traces do they leave? Her lips curved slightly. Precision, control. A mind that plans every detail yet thrives on chaos. They're watching us now, I'd wager. Poirot laughed, the sound grating. Mon Dieu, you make it sound like a play. But I, Henri Dupont, am no actor. I only admire the art. He leaned back, his mind racing. Dr. Hart's insight was too sharp, her words too close to the chameleon's profile. Was she merely observant, or was she baiting him? Japp approached, his notebook in hand. Monsieur Dupont, he said, his tone skeptical. You seem awfully curious for an art dealer. Care to share any observations? Poirot waved a hand, his spectacles slipping slightly. Moi? I see only beauty and tragedy, Inspector. But this manor, it is full of secrets, non. The police, they will find them, I am sure. Japp grunted, unconvinced, and turned to Ashford. We've searched the grounds. Nothing yet. The coroner's taking Blake's body for autopsy. Poison? Likely cyanide, but we'll know soon. Ashford nodded, his face grim. And the necklace, any leads? Not yet, Japp admitted. But we're questioning the staff again. Someone saw something, I'd bet my badge on it. Poirot, as Dupont excused himself, claiming a need to inspect the manor's paintings. He slipped into the corridor, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm, but his mind was anything but frivolous. The chameleon's note suggested another move was imminent, and Blake's murder was no random act. The financier's ambition, his connections, his presence at the gala, something had made him a target. Poirot needed to uncover what. He made his way to the library, now cordoned off with a constable at the door. Flashing a disarming smile, he convinced the young officer to let him peek inside, claiming an interest in the room's decor. The library was as he'd left it. Blake's body gone, but the shattered glass and brandy stain remained. Poirot knelt by the armchair, his magnifying glass revealing another faint smudge of white powder on the rug. Theatrical makeup he was, certain, but whose? Clara with her actress's tools? Or another skilled in disguise? He moved to the bookshelf where the hidden compartment had held the vial. It was empty now, the vial safely tucked in his pocket, awaiting analysis. He scanned the titles, noting a volume on Renaissance art slightly askew. He pulled it out, revealing another hidden recess, this one containing a single glove, black silk, its cuff embroidered with a tiny silver thread. He pocketed it, his mind racing. The chameleon was leaving clues, whether by design or carelessness, and each was a thread in their web. Poirot left the library, his Dupont persona intact, and wandered the manor's halls, pausing to chat with servants. A maid, flustered by his flamboyant manner, mentioned seeing a figure in the gardens the previous night, cloaked and swift. "Thought it was a ghost," she whispered, crossing herself. Poirot thanked her, his mind adding the detail to his growing tapestry. He encountered Clara in the drawing room, where she sat alone, staring at a portrait of Lady Eleanor's mother. "Mademoiselle," he said, his voice bright, "you are melancholy." "This painting, it inspires such thoughts," she started, then smiled weakly. "It's beautiful, isn't it? But it makes me think of loss. Gordon was so full of life, and now—" Her voice broke, and Poirot noted the tears in her eyes, genuine or a performance. "Oui, a tragedy," he said, patting her hand. "But you, a star of the stage, you know how to face such darkness, no?" She laughed, a brittle sound. "On stage, yes. In life it's harder. I keep wondering, why him?" Poirot's eyes softened, though his mind was sharp. "A question we all ask. Did he share any fears with you, perhaps? A rival? A debt?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, nothing. He was private about some things." Poirot nodded, letting the moment pass. He moved on to the terrace where Dr. Hart stood, her notebook in hand, sketching the garden's layout. "Madam, you are an artist as well as a scholar," he exclaimed, peering over her shoulder. She closed the notebook abruptly. "Just notes," she said. "I find patterns in everything, even landscapes." "Fascinant," Poirot said. "And the pattern of this crime? What does it tell you?" Her eyes met his, cool and assessing. "It's a game, Monsieur Dupont. The killer wants to be seen but not caught. They're testing us." Poirot's heart quickened, but he laughed. "A game. Mon Dieu, I prefer simpler games like cards." "But you see the board. Oui?" She smiled faintly. "I see enough." As the day wore on, Poirot continued his rounds, his Dupont persona, drawing amused glances and unguarded comments. He overheard Lady Eleanor speaking sharply to Withers about a locked door in the west wing, and caught Victor slipping into the billiard room, his movements furtive. Each encounter added to his mental map, but the chameleon's identity remained elusive. By evening, Japp gathered the guests in the drawing room, his face grim. "The autopsy confirms cyanide," he announced. "In the brandy. Someone tampered with the D." Chapter 7. Secrets of the Manor. The morning mist clung to Ravenwood Manor's ivy-clad walls, softening the sharp edges of its turrets and lending an ethereal quality to the sprawling estate. Hercule Poirot, still masquerading as the flamboyant, Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood in the grand hallway, his mustard-yellow waistcoat a stark contrast to the muted tones of the oak-paneled walls. The false mustache, slightly askew for effect, itched faintly, but he resisted the urge to adjust it, his green eyes sharp behind the oversized spectacles. In his pocket he carried the chameleon's latest taunt, a note that mocked his pursuit, and the black silk glove found in the library's hidden compartment, its silver-threaded cuff a tantalizing clue. The murder of Gordon Blake and the theft of the Emerald Star had plunged the manor into a state of uneasy vigilance, and Poirot knew the chameleon was watching, their next move imminent. The breakfast table had been a somber affair, with the guests barely speaking, their eyes darting to the empty chair where Blake had sat. Inspector Japp's ongoing investigation had yielded little beyond confirmation of cyanide in the brandy, and the police presence, constables patrolling the grounds, a chemist analyzing the decanter, only heightened the tension. Poirot, as Dupont, had maintained his bumbling persona, chattering about art and dropping hints of his supposed black market connections, hoping to provoke a reaction from the chameleon. But the guests, Lord Ashford, Lady Eleanor, Victor, Clara Duval, and Dr. Evelyn Hart, remained guarded, their alibis airtight yet unconvincing. Now, as the household stirred, Poirot saw an opportunity to explore the manor's secrets. The chameleons. Note, "You chase shadows, monsieur, but the chameleon shifts with the light," suggested a familiarity with the estate, a knowledge of its hidden corners. The glove, the theatrical makeup, the vial of liquid, all pointed to a criminal who thrived on deception, perhaps using the manor's very structure to their advantage. Poirot resolved to uncover its secrets, starting with the physical layout. He slipped into a side corridor, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm to maintain the Dupont facade. The hallway was lined with portraits of Ashford ancestors, their stern gazes following him as he moved. He paused by a tapestry depicting a hunting scene, its colors faded but intricate. Noticing a slight bulge in the fabric, he lifted it, revealing a narrow door, its wood worn but sturdy. The lock was old, its keyhole rusted, but a faint scratch suggested recent use. Poirot's heart quickened. He produced a small tool from his pocket, a relic of past cases, and worked the lock, which yielded with a soft click. The door opened to a hidden passage, its walls damp and lined with cobwebs. A faint draft carried the scent of mildew and something sharper, oil perhaps, or polish. Poirot stepped inside, his footsteps muffled by dust. The passage wound downward, its stone steps uneven, leading to a small chamber beneath the library. The room was bare save for a wooden crate and a lantern, its wick recently trimmed. Poirot examined the crate, finding a scrap of fabric caught in its splintered edge. A delicate lace, dyed sapphire blue, matching the gown Clara Duval had worn at the gala. He pocketed the fabric, his mind racing. Was Clara the chameleon, or was this another of the criminal's misdirections? He returned to the passage, following it further until it emerged behind a bookshelf in the library, the very spot where he'd found the vial and glove. The connection was clear. The chameleon used these passages to move unseen, striking with precision. But how had they accessed them? Only someone intimately familiar with the manor, family perhaps, or a trusted servant would know such secrets. Poirot emerged into the library, closing the bookshelf behind him. The room was quiet, the police tape removed, but the air still heavy with the memory of Blake's death. He re-examined the scene. The armchair, the shattered glass, the smudge of white powder. The open window, he noted, faced the gardens, where a maid had reported seeing a cloaked figure. He stepped outside, his spectacles glinting in the morning light, and scanned the lawn. A faint imprint in the grass, a heel, narrow and pointed, caught his eye. A woman's shoe, perhaps, or a man's with a deliberate disguise. He returned to the manor, his Dupont persona intact, and sought out Withers, the butler who was polishing silver in a small pantry. "Monsieur Withers," Poirot exclaimed, his voice high and effusive. "Such dedication, no? This manor, it is a marvel, full of history. Tell me, are there many secret places here?" Withers paused, his hands steady but his eyes wary. "Secret places, sir? It's an old house, full of quirks, but I wouldn't know about anything hidden." Poirot tilted his head, his spectacles slipping slightly. "Mais oui, but old houses, they whisper their stories, no? Passages, perhaps, for lovers or spies?" Withers' lips twitched, but he shook his head. "Not that I've seen, sir. Just the usual, creaky floors and dusty attics." Poirot thanked him, noting the butler's unease. Withers knew more than he let on, but pressing him now would yield nothing. Instead, Poirot wandered to the drawing room, where Clara sat alone sketching on a pad. Her sapphire gown was gone, replaced by a simple blouse, but her fingers trembled as she drew. "Mademoiselle," Poirot said, beaming, "you are an artist as well as an actress. May I see?" She started, closing the pad quickly. "Oh, it's Nothing, Monsieur Dupont, just doodles to calm my nerves. This place, it's getting to me. Naturellement, Poirot said, his tone sympathetic. A theft, a murder, it is too much. But you, with your talent, you see things others miss, no? Perhaps you saw something last night? Her eyes flickered and she shook her head. I was in my room when it happened. I told the inspector everything. Poirot nodded, his mind noting the lie. Clara had been near the library. He'd seen her shawl in the corridor. He moved on, encountering Victor in the billiard room where the young man was lining up a shot with unnecessary force. Monsieur Victor, Poirot exclaimed, you play with such passion. This room, it is your refuge, oui? Victor missed his shot, the cue ball spinning wildly. It's just a game, he muttered. Keeps me out of trouble. Trouble? Poirot said, his voice light. A young man like you? Surely you are too busy with art in Paris to find trouble here. Victor's jaw tightened. Paris was a mistake. I'm done with all that. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was sharp. Victor's past in Paris, his art, his secrets, might hold a key. He excused himself, seeking out Dr. Hart, who was in the conservatory, examining a rare orchid. Madame, your knowledge, it extends to plants as well, he said, his spectacles glinting. This manor, it is full of wonders, no? She looked up, her expression cool. Wonders and dangers, Monsieur Dupont. Every petal has its poison if you know where to look. Poirot's heart quickened. Poison, oui. Like poor Monsieur Blake. You think the killer knew such secrets? Her eyes met his, unflinching. They knew enough to kill silently, that's all that matters, Poirot laughed, the sound grating. Mon Dieu, you are wise. I, Henri Dupont, prefer simpler pleasures like a fine painting. Tell me, have you seen the Manor's collection? She shook her head, dismissing him. But Poirot noted her steady hands, her calm under pressure. He moved on to Lady Eleanor, whom he found in the morning room writing a letter. Madame, you are the heart of this house, he said, bowing. But such troubles, it must weigh on you, no? She smiled, though her eyes were tired. It's a heavy burden, monsieur. Dupont, but we endure. Poirot leaned closer, his tone conspiratorial. And the manor, it has its secrets, oui. Old passages, perhaps, where secrets hide. Her pen paused, and she looked up sharply. You've been listening to stories, haven't you? It's just an old house, nothing more. Poirot nodded, but her reaction confirmed his suspicions. The manor held secrets, and someone, perhaps Lady Eleanor, knew more than they admitted. He spent the afternoon exploring further, his Dupont persona allowing him to wander without arousing suspicion. In the west wing, he found a locked door, its handle polished despite the dust around it. A servant, flustered, claimed it led to storage, but Poirot's tool revealed another passage, this one leading to the attic. There, among cobwebs and crates, he found a torn photograph, half of a face, a woman's with auburn hair like Lady Eleanor's. By evening, the manor was abuzz with Japp's latest findings. No fingerprints on the decanter, but traces of cyanide in the library's air vent, suggesting a calculated delivery. Poirot, as Dupont joined the guest for dinner, his chatter keeping them off guard. He dropped hints of a rare painting he claimed to possess, a fictional masterpiece by a Renaissance artist rumored to be hidden in the manor. Such a treasure, he exclaimed, watching their reactions. Victor's eyes narrowed, Clara's hands stilled, and Dr. Hart's pen paused. Lady Eleanor excused herself early, claiming a headache. As night fell, Poirot sat in his suite, the glove, the fabric, the photograph, and the chameleon's note before him. The manor's passages, the clues, the lies, all pointed to a web of deception. The chameleon was close, their identity hidden in plain sight. Poirot, as Dupont, would continue to play the fool, but his little gray cells were weaving a trap of their own. Chapter 8. The Professor's Puzzle. The air in Ravenwood Manor carried a chill that seemed to seep from the very walls, a reminder of the secrets they held. Hercule Poirot, still cloaked in the flamboyant guise of Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood in the conservatory, where shafts of pale sunlight filtered through glass panes, illuminating rows of exotic plants. His mustard-yellow waistcoat clashed vividly with the greenery, and the red cravat, slightly askew, added to the theatrical absurdity of his persona. The false mustache itched, but Poirot's focus was unwavering, his green eyes sharp behind the oversized spectacles. In his pocket he carried the chameleon's latest taunt, the black silk glove, the sapphire lace from the hidden passage, and the torn photograph of a woman's face, her auburn hair a possible link to Lady Eleanor. The murder of Gordon Blake and the theft of the Emerald Star had escalated the stakes, and the manor's hidden passages suggested a criminal who moved like a phantom. Today, Poirot aimed to unravel the puzzle of Dr. Evelyn Hart, the reclusive professor whose intellect seemed both a shield and a weapon. The conservatory was a jungle of ferns, orchids, and climbing vines, their scents mingling with the damp earthiness of the air. Dr. Hart stood near a table, her gray hair pulled into its usual severe bun, her hands gently probing a rare orchid's petals. Her plain dress and unadorned demeanor contrasted sharply with the manor's opulence, but her eyes, sharp and unyielding, betrayed a mind that missed nothing. Poirot had observed her detachment since his arrival, the way she watched the other guests, her notebook always at hand, her comments laced with a clinical precision that bordered on unsettling. Was she merely a scholar of human behavior, as she claimed, or was she the chameleon hiding behind a mask of intellect? Poirot approached, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm, his voice high and effusive. "Madame Hart, what a marvel this conservatory. These plants, they are like art, no? And you, with your knowledge, you must find them as fascinating as the human mind." She looked up, her expression cool but not unfriendly. "Plants are simpler than people, Monsieur Dupont. They don't lie, though they can be deadly." She gestured to the orchid. "This one, for instance, its sap can cause a rash, but in the right hands it's merely beautiful." Poirot's spectacles glinted as he leaned closer, feigning fascination. "Mon Dieu, beauty and danger, they are old friends, oui? Like this manor, perhaps, with its secrets and tragedies. Tell me, madame, your studies, do they help you see the secrets of places like this?" Her lips twitched, almost a smile. Places, like Ravenwood, are microcosms of human nature. Ambition, fear, greed, they're all here, written in the way people move, speak, avoid. My work is to read those signs. Poirot nodded, his Dupont persona in full bloom. "Fascinant. And this chameleon, as they call the thief, what signs would they leave? A clever mind, none?" Dr. Hart's eyes met his, steady and piercing. "A clever mind, yes, but also a theatrical one. They thrive on the performance, the thrill of outwitting others. The theft, the murder, they're acts in a play, each designed to provoke a reaction." Poirot's heart quickened, but he laughed, the sound grating. "A play, mon Dieu, you make it sound like one of Mademoiselle Duval's performances. But you, madame, you see the stage, oui? Tell me, what role does the chameleon play?" She paused, her fingers brushing the orchid stem. "The director, perhaps, or the lead, hiding in plain sight. There's someone who knows how to manipulate attention, draw it away, or focus it where they want." Poirot's mind raced. Her words echoed his own thoughts about the chameleon, a master of misdirection, using the gala's chaos and Blake's murder to obscure their true aim. He pressed further, his tone light. "And in this play, madame, who are the players? Monsieur Victor with his brooding, Mademoiselle Clara with her charm, or perhaps Milord and Milady Ashford with their secrets?" Dr. Hart's gaze sharpened, but she answered evenly. "Everyone's a player, Monsieur Dupont, even you with your colorful presence. But the chameleon? They're the one who knows the script." Poirot chuckled, adjusting his cravat. "Moi? I am but a humble dealer enchanted by beauty. But you, madame, you see the script, non? Perhaps you could write such a play yourself." Her smile was faint, almost enigmatic. "I study, not create, but if I were the chameleon, I'd be careful. A mind like yours, even behind all that flair, might see too much." The comment, delivered with a trace of amusement, sent a shiver through Poirot, though he maintained his bumbling facade. Dr. Hart was testing him, probing his disguise as he probed hers. He excused himself, claiming a need to admire the manners, art, and slipped into the corridor, his mind awhirl. Her insight was too precise, her detachment too calculated. Was she merely an observer, or was she orchestrating the game? He wandered the manor's halls, his DuPont persona drawing amused glances from servants. The police presence had intensified with constables searching rooms and questioning staff, but Poirot knew the chameleon's tracks were subtler. He returned to the library, where Blake's body had been found, now empty save for a lingering constable. Pretending to study a painting, Poirot re-examined the bookshelf, finding no new clues but noting a faint scratch on the floor, a drag mark, perhaps from a chair moved to conceal something. He filed it away, his thoughts turning to the hidden passage he'd discovered the previous day. Poirot made his way to the west wing, where the locked door had led to the attic. Using his tool, he opened it again, climbing the narrow stairs to the dusty space above. The torn photograph lay where he'd left it, half hidden among crates. He studied it closely, noting the woman's features, high cheekbones, a delicate jaw, auburn hair. The resemblance to Lady Eleanor was striking, but the photograph's age suggested it was not her, perhaps a relative, a mother or sister. He pocketed it, resolving to ask Ashford about the family's history. As he descended, he encountered Clara Duval in the corridor, her face pale, her sketchpad clutched to her chest. "Mademoiselle," he exclaimed, his voice bright, "you wander these halls like a muse. Tell me, do you draw the manor's secrets?" She started, then smiled weakly. "Just exploring, Monsieur Dupont. This place feels like a maze sometimes." "Oui. A maze of shadows," he said, his spectacles glinting. "And last night, poor Monsieur Blake. Did you see him before his tragedy? Perhaps he spoke of something?" Her eyes flickered and she shook her head. "I saw him at dinner, that's all. He was cheerful, as always." Poirot nodded, noting the lie. Clara had been near the library. He'd seen her shawl. He let it pass, moving on to the drawing room, where Victor sat alone, staring at a chessboard. "Monsieur Victor," Poirot said, his tone effusive. "A game of strategy, no? You play alone, or do you imagine an opponent?" Victor's jaw tightened. "Just passing time. I don't need an opponent." Poirot leaned closer, his voice dropping. "But in this manner, monsieur, we all have opponents, we. The chameleon, they play a dangerous game. Did Monsieur Blake play it too?" Victor's hand froze on a pawn. Blake was a fool, always chasing money. Maybe it caught up with him. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was sharp. Victor's bitterness hinted at a grudge, perhaps a motive. He excused himself, seeking out Lady Eleanor, whom he found in the morning room, arranging flowers. "Madame, such grace," he said, bowing. "These blooms, they are a comfort in such dark times, no?" She smiled, though her eyes were tired. "They're a distraction, Monsieur Dupont. This house, it feels heavier every day." Poirot nodded, his tone gentle. "And its history, madame. It must be rich. Old photographs, perhaps, of family. I found one torn in the attic. A woman, much like you." Her hand stilled, a rose slipping from her fingers. "The attic? You shouldn't be there, it's just old junk." "Mais oui, but such junk tells stories," he said, watching her closely. "This woman, she was important, non?" Lady Eleanor's face tightened, but she recovered quickly. "Probably my mother. She loved this house. Now, if you'll excuse me." She left abruptly, leaving Poirot with a new thread to pull. By afternoon, he joined the guests for tea, his DuPont persona keeping them at ease. He dropped hints of his fictional painting, watching their reactions. Clara's eyes lingered on him. Victor's fingers tapped nervously and Dr. Hart's pen paused. Lord Ashford, distracted by Japp's questions, seemed oblivious. But Lady Eleanor excused herself again, her headache a frequent excuse. As night fell, Poirot sat in his suite, the clues spread before him. The glove, the lace, the photograph, the note. Dr. Hart's words echoed in his mind, a mind that plans every detail yet thrives on chaos. She was a puzzle, her intellect a mirror to his own. But was she the chameleon? The manor's secrets, its passages, its history, held the key, and Poirot, as Dupont, would continue to play the fool, drawing the chameleon closer to their mistake. Chapter 9. A Second Theft. The morning light struggled through the heavy clouds over Ravenwood Manor, casting a pallid glow across its stone facade and deepening the shadows within its halls. Hercule Poirot, still enveloped in the flamboyant guise of Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood in the grand library, his mustard-yellow waistcoat a garish splash against the somber oak shelves. The red cravat hung loosely, and the false mustache, though meticulously applied, itched faintly as he adjusted his oversized spectacles. In his pocket he carried the accumulating clues: the chameleon's taunting note, the black silk glove with its silver-threaded cuff, the sapphire lace from the hidden passage, and the torn photograph of a woman with auburn hair. The murder of Gordon Blake and the theft of the Emerald Star had set the manor on edge, and Poirot's little gray cells buzzed with the certainty that the chameleon was planning their next move. The professor's cryptic insights from the previous day lingered in his mind, her words about a mind that thrived on chaos hinting at a pattern he was only beginning to unravel. The library, still marked by the faint stain of Blake's spilled brandy, was quiet, the police having retreated to their temporary headquarters in the village. Inspector Japp had left a single constable to guard the manor, a young man whose nervous pacing did little to inspire confidence. Poirot, as Dupont, had spent the morning mingling with the guests, his effusive chatter about art and treasures designed to loosen tongues and provoke reactions. Lord Ashford's frustration was palpable, his anger at the theft and murder simmering beneath his aristocratic reserve. Lady Eleanor moved with a forced calm, her eyes darting to corners as if expecting shadows to move. Victor Ashford's brooding had intensified, his curt responses betraying a restlessness that Poirot found intriguing. Clara Duval, her actress's charm-strained, clung to light conversation, while Dr. Evelyn Hart remained a study in detachment, her notebook ever present, her gaze dissecting every interaction. Poirot's goal today was to push the chameleon into action. The note, "You chase shadows, monsieur, but the chameleon shifts with the light," suggested a criminal who relished the game, and Poirot intended to raise the stakes. He had planted a seed at breakfast, casually mentioning a rare manuscript in Lord Ashford's collection, a 15th-century illuminated text rumored to be worth a fortune. "Such a treasure," he had exclaimed, his spectacles glinting. "In my trade, mes amis, such a manuscript is a jewel of the mind." The guests had reacted subtly. Clara's smile had tightened, Victor's fingers had stilled, and Dr. Hart's pen had paused. Lady Eleanor had excused herself, her headache a recurring excuse, while Ashford had dismissed the manuscript as a family trinket. Now in the library, Poirot examined the glass-fronted cabinet where the manuscript was kept, its lock intricate, but not impregnable. The cabinet stood near a window overlooking the gardens where the fountain's spray caught the light. He noted a faint smudge on the glass, similar to the theatrical makeup found in the library after Blake's death. His heart quickened, but he maintained his Dupont facade, humming a tuneless melody as he wandered the room, his cane tapping lightly. The constable stationed by the door paid him little mind, accustomed to the art dealer's eccentricities. The day passed in a haze of tension, the manor's guests moving like pieces on a chessboard. Poirot, as Dupont, joined them for luncheon in the dining hall, where the conversation was stilted, the weight of Blake's murder and the theft hanging heavy. "Mes amis," he said, raising a glass of water, "we must find joy even in dark. Times none? This manuscript, my Lord Ashford, it is a marvel. Have you shown it to your guests?" Ashford's brow furrowed. "It's rarely touched, Monsieur Dupont. It's valuable, yes, but I'm no scholar. It stays locked away." Clara leaned forward, her eyes bright. "Oh, but it sounds fascinating. Like something from a play. A hidden treasure. Stolen by a dashing rogue." Poirot laughed, his voice high and grating. "Mademoiselle, you have the soul of a story. But in truth, such treasures, they tempt the bold, oui?" Victor snorted, pushing his plate away. "Tempt the foolish, you mean?" This house is cursed with treasures. Dr. Hart looked up from her notebook, her voice calm. Value invites risk. Monsieur Dupont. The manuscript, like the emerald star, is a magnet for greed. Poirot's spectacles glinted as he nodded. Exactement. And greed it blinds, no? But I, Henri Dupont, see only beauty. He watched their faces, noting Lady Eleanor's quick glance at her son, Clara's forced smile, and Victor's clenched fist. The seed was planted. Now he needed to wait. By late afternoon, Poirot slipped into the manor's west wing, his exploration of its hidden passages unfinished. The locked door he'd found before yielded to his tool, revealing a narrow staircase to a disused servants' corridor. The air was stale, the walls lined with faded wallpaper, but a faint scuff mark on the floor suggested recent passage. He followed the corridor, his steps silent, until it opened into a small alcove near the library. There, tucked behind a loose panel, he found a single earring, pearl with a sapphire clasp, matching Clara's gown from the gala. His pulse quickened. Another clue, or another misdirection? He pocketed the earring and returned to the main house, his Dupont persona intact. As evening approached, the manor buzzed with anticipation of dinner, but a sudden commotion shattered the calm. Withers, the butler, burst into the drawing room, his face pale. "The manuscript," he gasped. "It's gone." The guests rushed to the library, Poirot among them, his heart racing but his expression one of flustered concern. The glass cabinet stood open, its lock picked with surgical precision. The manuscript, a leather-bound volume with gold leaf, was missing, leaving only a faint trace of white powder on the shelf. Poirot knelt, his magnifying glass revealing the familiar smudge of theatrical makeup. The chameleon had struck again, their audacity breathtaking. Lord Ashford's face was thunderous. "This is intolerable," he roared. "First the necklace, now this in my own home." He turned to the constable, who stammered apologies, claiming he'd been patrolling the gardens. Lady Eleanor clutched her husband's arm, her voice trembling. "Reginald, what's happening to us? First Gordon, now this." Clara's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide. "It's like a nightmare. Who could do this?" Victor's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the window. "Someone who knows this place too well." Dr. Hart stood apart, her notebook open, her pen still. "Another calculated move," she said softly. "The thief is sending a message." Poirot, as Dupont, wrung his hands. "Mon Dieu, another treasure gone. This chameleon, they are a ghost, no?" He watched their reactions, noting Clara's trembling hands, Victor's evasive glance, and Dr. Hart's calm scrutiny. Lady Eleanor's face was pale, her fingers twisting a handkerchief. Inspector Japp, summoned from the village, arrived within the hour, his face grim. "Another theft?" he growled, examining the cabinet. "This is no ordinary thief. They're playing with us." He turned to Poirot, his eyes narrowing. "Monsieur Dupont, you're always poking about. Seen anything useful?" Poirot waved a hand, his spectacles slipping. "Moi? I see only tragedy, Inspector. But this manuscript, it was a jewel of the... Mind we? Perhaps the thief, they love such beauty." Japp grunted, unconvinced, and began questioning the guests. Poirot slipped away, his mind racing. The theft followed the same pattern as the Emerald Star. A public setting, a distraction, this time the constable's absence, and a trace of makeup. The chameleon was taunting him, leaving clues to prove their superiority. But why the manuscript? Its value was academic, not monetary, suggesting a motive beyond greed. He returned to his suite, locking the door, and spread his clues on the desk. The note, the glove, the lace, the earring, the photograph. The chameleon's pattern was emerging. Each crime was a performance designed to dazzle and distract. The makeup suggested a theatrical mind, the passages a knowledge of the manor's secrets. Clara, with her actress's skills, was a possibility, but her nerves seemed genuine. Victor's bitterness and familiarity with the house made him a suspect, as did Lady Eleanor's evasiveness. Dr. Hart's intellect, however, was the most troubling, her insights too close to the chameleon's methods. Poirot sat, his eyes closing, as he pictured the library, the open cabinet, the smudge, the empty space. The theft had been swift, executed while the constable was away. Someone had known the patrol schedule, had access to the lock. He opened his notebook, adding the earring to his list of clues. The chameleon was close, their identity hidden in plain sight. As Henri Dupont, Poirot would continue to play the fool, but his little gray cells were weaving a net, ready to ensnare the master of deception. Chapter 10. The disguise deepens. The air in Ravenwood Manor was thick with suspicion, as if the very walls absorbed the tension that had grown since the theft of the Emerald Star and the murder of Gordon Blake, now compounded by the audacious theft of the rare manuscript. Hercule Poirot, ensconced in the flamboyant persona of Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood before the cracked mirror in his guest suite, adjusting the garish red cravat that clashed spectacularly with his mustard-yellow waistcoat. The false mustache, deliberately askew, tickled his upper lip, and the oversized spectacles magnified his green eyes to a comical degree. Yet behind the theatrical facade, his mind was a whirlwind of calculation, piecing together the clues that littered the manor like breadcrumbs: the chameleon's taunting notes, the black silk glove, the sapphire lace, the pearl earring with its sapphire clasp, the torn photograph, and the persistent traces of theatrical makeup. The chameleon was escalating their game, and Poirot knew he must deepen his disguise to draw them out. The morning light filtered through the heavy velvet drapes, casting a muted glow across the room's ornate furnishings: a four-poster bed, a polished writing desk, and a gilt-framed mirror that reflected the absurdity of his attire. Poirot's notebook lay open, its pages dense with observations. Clara Duval's nervous charm, Victor Ashford's brooding secrecy, Dr. Evelyn Hart's clinical detachment, Lady Eleanor's guarded glances, and Lord Ashford's simmering anger. The chameleon's latest note, "You chase shadows, monsieur, but the chameleon shifts with the light," was a challenge, a dare to catch a criminal who thrived on misdirection. Poirot's strategy was clear. As Henri Dupont, he would escalate his performance, presenting himself as a shady art dealer with ties to the black market, a tempting target for the chameleon's greed or curiosity. He slipped the clues into his pocket, adjusting his spectacles with a flourish, and descended the grand staircase, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm. The manor was alive with the murmur of servants and the occasional clatter of police activity. Inspector Japp's team was still combing the grounds, though their efforts had yielded little beyond frustration. The dining hall, where the guests gathered for a late breakfast, was a study in strained civility. Lord Ashford sat at the head, his face etched with exhaustion, a newspaper crumpled beside his plate. Lady Eleanor poured coffee with mechanical precision, her auburn hair catching the light. Victor slouched in his chair, his eyes fixed on a half-eaten scone, while Clara, her radiance dimmed, toyed with a teaspoon. Dr. Hart sat apart, her notebook open, her pen scratching as she observed the room with clinical intensity. Poirot entered, with a theatrical sweep, his voice high and effusive. "Bonjour, mes amis. What a morning, no? Though the heart it weeps for poor Monsieur Blake and the lost treasures. But I, Henri Dupont, bring news of beauty, a painting magnifique that I have acquired, a Renaissance masterpiece hidden in these very walls. Oui?" He beamed, watching their reactions closely. Ashford's brow furrowed, his patience thin. "Monsieur Dupont, your timing is peculiar. We're dealing with a murder and 2 thefts, and you speak of paintings?" Poirot waved a hand, his spectacles slipping slightly. "Pardonnez-moi, my lord, but art, it is a balm for the soul. This painting, it is said to be a lost work of Titian, a portrait of a lady worth a fortune. I have heard whispers it is here, in Ravenwood. Perhaps I shall find it, no?" Clara's eyes widened, her teaspoon clattering against her saucer. "A Titian? Here? That's incredible, Monsieur Dupont. How did you hear of it?" Poirot leaned closer, his tone conspiratorial. "In my trade, mademoiselle, one hears many whispers. A collector in Paris, he speaks of a painting hidden in an English manor. And I, Henri Dupont, have the nose for such treasures." He tapped his nose, noting Clara's forced smile. Victor snorted, pushing his plate away. Sounds like a fairy tale. This house has enough trouble without chasing myths. Dr. Hart looked up, her pen pausing. A hidden painting? Intriguing, Monsieur Dupont. But treasures, like secrets, often bring danger. You should be careful. Poirot's heart quickened, but he laughed, the sound grating. Danger? Moi? I am but a humble dealer, enchanted by beauty. But you, Madame Hart, you see the patterns. Oui? What does this painting tell you? Her eyes met his, cool and assessing. It tells me someone is weaving a story. Whether it's you or another, I can't say. Poirot's spectacles glinted as he nodded, filing away her words. Dr. Hart's insight was unnervingly precise, her detachment a potential mask. He turned to Lady Eleanor, who had remained silent. Madame, a painting in your home. Surely you know of such treasures? She hesitated, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. The manor is old, Monsieur Dupont. It holds many things, but I know of no Titian. Poirot smiled, his mind noting her unease. The fictional painting was a lure, designed to tempt the chameleon into action. If they believed a valuable artwork was within reach, they might reveal themselves, through a slip, a glance, or an attempt to steal it. He excused himself, claiming a need to inspect the manor's art collection, and slipped into the corridor, his cane tapping merrily. His true destination was the attic, where he'd found the torn photograph. The narrow staircase creaked under his weight, the air growing musty as he climbed. The attic was a labyrinth of crates and cobwebs, its shadows hiding secrets. He searched methodically, his magnifying glass revealing a faint trail of dust disturbed by recent footsteps. Near a stack of trunks, he found a small leather case, locked but scratched as if recently opened. Using his tool, he pried it open, revealing a bundle of letters tied with a faded ribbon. The handwriting matched the manor's old records. Ashford, family correspondence dated decades ago. One letter, addressed to Eleanor, spoke of a hidden treasure, a painting of great worth concealed to protect it from thieves. Poirot's pulse quickened. The painting was real or had been, and its mention might have reached the chameleon's ears. He pocketed the letter and descended, his Dupont persona intact. In the drawing room, he found Clara sketching, her fingers trembling slightly. Mademoiselle, he exclaimed, peering at her pad, you capture the soul of this place. Perhaps you have seen this Titian, non? She closed the pad quickly, her smile strained. I'm no art expert, Monsieur Dupont, just doodling to pass the time. Poirot nodded, noting the sapphire clasp of her earring, identical to the one he'd found. Bien sûr, but your eyes, they see much, oui? Perhaps you saw something last night when the manuscript vanished? Her face paled and she shook her head. I was in my room. I told the inspector everything. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind was sharp. Clara's lies were piling up, her nerves betraying her. He moved on to the billiard room where Victor was lining up a shot, his movements tense. Monsieur Victor, Poirot said, his voice bright. You play with such focus, but this painting, does it stir your artist's soul? Victor missed his shot, the cue ball spinning wildly. I don't care about paintings, he snapped. This house is a trap, not a gallery. Poirot tilted his head, his spectacles glinting. A trap, oui. But for whom? The chameleon, perhaps, or poor Monsieur Blake? Victor's jaw tightened and he stormed out, leaving Poirot alone. The young man's anger was a thread to pull, but Poirot needed more. He sought out Dr. Hart, finding her in the library, examining a volume on psychology. Madame, he exclaimed, you study the mind, but what of the heart? This painting, it speaks to both, no? She looked up, her expression unreadable. A painting is just pigment on canvas, Monsieur Dupont. It's the story behind it that matters. Why are you so interested? Poirot laughed, his voice grating. Moi? I am a dealer, enchanted by profit. But you, madame, you see the story, oui? What does this chameleon want with treasures? Her eyes narrowed slightly. Power, control, The thrill of outwitting everyone, including you. Poirot's heart skipped, but he maintained his facade. Dr. Hart's words were too close to the chameleon's profile, a mind that planned every detail, yet thrived on chaos. He excused himself, seeking Lady Eleanor, whom he found in the morning room, arranging roses. "Madame, such beauty," he said, bowing. "But this painting, does it hide in your family's history?" Her hand stilled, a petal falling. "You're persistent, Monsieur Dupont. The Ashfords have many relics, but no Titian that I know of." Poirot nodded, her evasion another clue. By evening, he gathered the guests in the drawing room, dropping more hints about the painting. "Mes amis, I have a buyer," he announced, his spectacles glinting. "A collector in London eager for this Titian. I shall display it tomorrow, oui?" He watched their faces, Clara's forced smile, Victor's clenched fist, Dr. Hart's raised eyebrow, Lady Eleanor's quick exit. As night fell, Poirot sat in his suite. The clues spread before him. The note, the glove, the lace, the earring, the photograph, the letter. The chameleon was circling, drawn by the bait of the painting. Poirot, as Dupont, was ready to spring his trap, his little gray cells weaving a net to catch the master of deception. Chapter 11. A Dangerous Encounter. The twilight draped Ravenwood Manor in a veil of shadows, its stone walls absorbing the fading light as if guarding the secrets within. Hercule Poirot, still cloaked in the flamboyant guise of Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood in the grand corridor, his mustard-yellow waistcoat a garish contrast to the somber oak paneling. The red cravat hung loosely, its ends slightly frayed from constant adjustment, and the false mustache itched, though Poirot's focus remained razor-sharp behind the oversized spectacles. In his pocket, he carried the chameleon's taunting note, the black silk glove, the sapphire lace, the pearl earring, the torn photograph, and the old letter hinting at a hidden painting. The thefts of the Emerald Star and the rare manuscript, coupled with Gordon Blake's murder, had woven a web of suspicion around the manor's inhabitants, and Poirot's bait, a fictional Titian painting, had stirred the pot. Tonight, he sensed, the chameleon would make a move, and he was ready to deepen his disguise to provoke it. The manor hummed with a tense undercurrent, the guests and staff moving like actors in a play nearing its climax. Inspector Japp's investigation had stalled, his team finding no fingerprints on the manuscript's cabinet and only traces of cyanide in the library's air vent. The constable stationed at the manor was young and easily distracted, a fact Poirot had noted with interest. As Henri Dupont, he had spent the day dropping hints about the Titian, claiming to have arranged a private viewing for a London buyer. The guests' reactions, Clara Duval's nervous curiosity, Victor Ashford's sullen dismissal, Dr. Evelyn Hart's cryptic scrutiny, and Lady Eleanor's evasiveness, had confirmed his suspicions. The chameleon was among them, drawn to the lure of a new prize. Poirot adjusted his spectacles, his heart quickening as he prepared to escalate his performance. He had announced at dinner that the Titian would be displayed in the drawing room at midnight, a bold move designed to tempt the chameleon into action. Now, as the clock neared 10, he wandered the corridors, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm, his bumbling persona intact. The manor's grandeur, its chandeliers, tapestries, and ancestral portraits, seemed to watch him, their silence heavy with secrets. He paused by a window overlooking the gardens where the fountain's spray glinted in the moonlight. A faint movement caught his eye, a shadow flitting near the rose bushes. His pulse quickened, but he maintained his facade, humming a tuneless melody as he moved on. In the drawing room, he found Lady Eleanor alone, arranging a vase of lilies with a precision that belied her strained expression. Her auburn hair was swept into an elegant chignon, but her hands trembled slightly, betraying her unease. Poirot swept in, his voice high and effusive. "Madame, such beauty, these flowers. They rival the Titian I shall show tonight, non?" She started, a lily slipping from her grasp. "Monsieur Dupont, you're persistent. This painting of yours, it's causing quite a stir." Poirot's spectacles glinted as he leaned closer, his tone conspiratorial. Mais oui, madame. A masterpiece, hidden in your very home. But you know this manor's secrets, oui? Perhaps you've seen such a treasure? Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of suspicion crossing her face. You're more than you seem, Monsieur Dupin. Why this obsession with a painting that may not exist? Poirot's heart skipped, but he laughed, the sound grating. Moi? I am but a dealer enchanted by profit. But you, madame, you guard this house like a queen. Tell me, is there a secret you keep from poor Henri? Her lips tightened, and she stepped closer, her voice low. You're playing a dangerous game, monsieur. This house has eyes, and they see more than you think. She turned abruptly, leaving the room, her silk skirt rustling like a whisper. Poirot stood still, his mind racing. Lady Eleanor's words were a warning, perhaps a threat, and her suspicion of his disguise suggested she knew more than she let on. Was she the chameleon, or merely a pawn in their game? He filed the encounter away, moving to the library, where he'd found the glove and vial. The room was empty, the constable absent, likely patrolling the grounds. Poirot examined the bookshelf, his magnifying glass revealing a faint scratch on the hidden panel, a new mark, suggesting recent use. He opened it, finding nothing inside, but the air carried a faint scent of perfume, floral, like Clara's. He slipped into the hidden passage behind the bookshelf, its stone walls cool and damp. The passage wound toward the west wing, where he'd found the sapphire lace and the torn photograph. As he navigated the narrow corridor, a soft creak echoed behind him. He froze, his hand tightening on his cane. A figure emerged from the shadows. Lady Eleanor, her face pale in the dim light, her eyes wide with alarm. Monsieur Dupin, she gasped. What are you doing here? Poirot's heart pounded, but he maintained his bumbling facade. Mon Dieu, madame. You startle poor Henri. I explore, you see. This manor, it is a maze of wonders. But you, why are you in such a place? Her hand clutched a small key, its surface glinting. I checked the passages. Old houses have their dangers. You shouldn't be here, it's not safe. Poirot's spectacles glinted as he stepped closer. Not safe? But madame, you know these paths, oui? Perhaps you seek the Titian like me? Her eyes flashed, and for a moment he thought she might strike him. You're meddling in things you don't understand, she hissed. Leave this alone, monsieur, or you'll regret it. She pushed past him, disappearing into the passage's depths. Poirot stood still, his mind a whirl. Lady Eleanor's presence in the passage, her key, her warning, all pointed to a secret she guarded fiercely. Was she protecting the chameleon, or was she the criminal herself? He returned to the main house, his cane tapping softly, and made his way to the drawing room where the fictional Titian would soon be displayed. The room was empty, its chandeliers dim, the air heavy with anticipation. He adjusted a velvet curtain, ensuring a clear view of the door, and waited. As midnight approached, the guests gathered, their faces a mix of curiosity and unease. Clara arrived, her sapphire gown shimmering, her smile forced. Victor slouched by a window, his eyes darting to the door. Dr. Hart stood apart, her notebook closed, her gaze piercing. Lord Ashford entered, his expression grim, followed by Lady Eleanor, who avoided Poirot's eyes. Mes amis, Poirot exclaimed, his voice high. The moment arrives. The Titian, it is here, a masterpiece to dazzle the soul. He gestured to a covered easel, a prop he'd arranged with a servant's help, a blank canvas draped for effect. Clara clapped, her enthusiasm brittle. Oh, Monsieur Dupin, show us. I've never seen a Titian. Victor snorted. This is nonsense. There's no painting. Dr. Hart's voice was calm. Let's see it, monsieur. Your enthusiasm is intriguing. Poirot's heart raced as he approached the easel, his hand hovering over the cloth. Before he could unveil it, a loud crash echoed from the corridor. A vase shattered on the marble floor. The guests turned, startled, and Poirot seized the moment, slipping to the door. In the hallway, he found Withers, his face pale, a broken vase at his feet. I tripped, sir, the butler stammered. Didn't see it. Poirot's eyes narrowed, but he smiled. Mon Dieu, such clumsiness. but no harm, oui? He returned to the drawing room, where the guests were whispering, their eyes on the easel. He unveiled the canvas, revealing its blank surface, and laughed. Alas, a geste, mes amis. The Titian, it eludes us still. But the hunt, it is thrilling, non? The guests' reactions were telling. Clara's laugh was strained, Victor's scowl deepened, Dr. Hart's eyebrow rose, and Lady Eleanor's hands clenched. Poirot's trap had failed to catch the chameleon, but it had stirred the waters. As the guests dispersed, he lingered, his mind replaying Lady Eleanor's warning. The encounter in the passage had been no accident. She knew something, perhaps everything. In his suite, Poirot removed the false mustache, his face weary, but his mind alight. The clues, the note, the glove, the lace, the earring, the photograph, the letter, formed a pattern, but the chameleon's identity remained elusive. Lady Eleanor's key, her presence in the passage, her threat, all suggested a deeper role. As Henri Dupont, Poirot would continue his performance, but the little gray cells were closing in, ready to unmask the master of deception. Chapter 12. The trap is set. The evening air at Ravenwood Manor was heavy with the scent of impending rain, the clouds gathering like conspirators over the estate's ancient stone walls. Hercule Poirot, still cloaked in the garish guise of Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood in the drawing room, his mustard-yellow waistcoat a bold contrast to the room's muted elegance. The red cravat hung loosely, its ends frayed from constant adjustment, and the false mustache, though meticulously applied, itched faintly. Behind the oversized spectacles, his green eyes gleamed with quiet determination. In his pocket, he carried the chameleon's taunting note, the black silk glove, the sapphire lace, the pearl earring, the torn photograph, and the old letter hinting at a hidden painting. The thefts of the Emerald Star and the rare manuscript, coupled with Gordon Blake's murder, had woven a tapestry of deceit, and Poirot's fictional Titian painting had stirred the waters. Tonight he would set a trap to catch the chameleon, using the manor's own secrets against them. The drawing room was a stage of opulence. Crystal chandeliers cast soft light over velvet armchairs, a marble fireplace glowed with embers, and tall windows revealed the darkening gardens beyond. Poirot had spent the day as Dupont, amplifying his performance as a shady art dealer, dropping hints of the Titian's imminent sale to a mysterious buyer. The guests, Lord Reginald Ashford, Lady Eleanor, Victor, Clara Duval, and Dr. Evelyn Hart, had reacted with varying degrees of interest and unease, their guarded glances confirming Poirot's suspicions. The chameleon was among them, drawn to the bait. Lady Eleanor's warning in the hidden passage the previous night lingered in his mind. Her words, "You're meddling in things you don't understand," a clue to her role, whether as protector or perpetrator. Poirot's plan was meticulous, designed to exploit the chameleon's theatrical nature. He had rigged the drawing room with subtle traps, a hidden camera concealed in a candelabra, its lens trained on the easel where the Titian would be displayed, a marked velvet cloth, dusted with invisible powder that would cling to a thief's hands, and a pressure plate beneath the rug, wired to trigger a silent alarm, a bell in his suite. The easel, draped with a cloth, held a blank canvas, a prop to lure the chameleon into action. He had announced at luncheon that the painting would be unveiled at midnight for a private buyer, ensuring the news spread through the manor's whispering corridors. As the clock neared 11, Poirot wandered the halls, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm, his Dupont persona in full bloom. The manor was quiet, the police presence reduced to a single constable patrolling the grounds. Inspector Japp, frustrated by the lack of progress, had returned to the village to consult the coroner, leaving Poirot free to act. He paused by a portrait of an Ashford ancestor, its stern eyes seeming to watch him, and checked the hidden passage behind the tapestry. The door was locked, but a fresh scratch on the handle suggested recent use. He smiled faintly, his trap set, his senses alert. In the drawing room he found Clara Duval, her sapphire gown shimmering in the firelight, her sketch-pad open on her lap. "Mademoiselle," he exclaimed, his voice high and effusive, You are a vision sketching in such a place. Perhaps you draw the Titian, none? She started, closing the pad. Oh, Monsieur Dupont, you're too much. I'm just passing time. This painting of yours, it's all anyone talks about. Poirot's spectacles glinted as he leaned closer. Mais oui, a masterpiece. Tonight it will shine, and my buyer, he will be enchanted. But you, mademoiselle, you know the stage. Does this not feel like a play? Her smile faltered, her fingers twisting a strand of hair. A play? Maybe. But it's a dark one, after everything. Poirot nodded, noting her nerves. He moved on to the library where Victor Ashford stood by the window staring into the night. Monsieur Victor, Poirot said, his voice bright, you brood like a poet. This Titian, it stirs the soul, no? Victor's jaw tightened, his eyes sharp. It's a fantasy, Dupont. This house doesn't need more ghosts. Poirot tilted his head, his tone conspiratorial. Ghosts, oui, but treasures. They call to the bold. Perhaps you know of such secrets from your Paris days? Victor turned away, his voice low. Paris is dead to me. Leave it alone. He strode out, leaving Poirot with a new thread to pull. In the conservatory, Dr. Evelyn Hart was examining a fern, her notebook open beside her. Madame, Poirot exclaimed, you find beauty in the green, oui? But this painting, it is a different beauty, one that tempts, no? She looked up, her gaze cool. Temptation is a motive, monsieur. Dupont, your painting is a magnet for greed or something else. Poirot's heart quickened, but he laughed. Greed? Moi? I seek only art. But you, madame, you see the motives, oui? What does this chameleon want? Her lips twitched. Control. The thrill of the game. They're watching you, Dupont, as closely as you watch them. Poirot's spectacles glinted as he nodded, her words echoing his own thoughts. Dr. Hart's insight was unnervingly precise, her detachment a potential mask. He sought out Lady Eleanor, finding her in the morning room, arranging roses with a trembling hand. Madame, he said, bowing. Your Grace, it calms the heart. But this painting, does it not excite you? Her eyes flickered, her voice sharp. You're relentless, Monsieur Dupont. This house has enough trouble without your games. Poirot leaned closer, his tone gentle. Games, madame? But life, it is a game, no? And you know its rules. Oui? She turned away, her hand crushing a petal. You're playing with fire, monsieur. Be careful. Her warning, like the one in the passage, sent a shiver through him, but he maintained his facade. As midnight approached, the guests gathered. In the drawing room, their faces a mix of anticipation and unease. Lord Ashford stood by the fireplace, his expression grim. Lady Eleanor lingered near the door, her eyes darting to the easel. Clara sat on a velvet couch, her sketch pad closed, her smile forced. Victor leaned against a wall, his arms crossed, while Dr. Hart stood apart, her notebook tucked away. Poirot, as Dupont swept to the easel, his voice ringing out. Mes amis, the moment arrives. The Titian, a masterpiece, will dazzle us all. He paused, his hand on the cloth, watching. Their faces. A faint hum sounded from the pressure plate. A footstep, too light for the constable. Poirot's heart raced, but he maintained his performance, pulling the cloth to reveal the blank canvas. Alas, he cried, his spectacles slipping. A geste, mes amis. The Titian, it hides still. The guests gasped, then laughed nervously, but Poirot's eyes were on the door where a shadow moved. He slipped into the corridor, his cane abandoned, and followed the shadow to the west wing. The hidden passage door was ajar, and he entered, his senses alert. A figure stood at the far end, cloaked, their face obscured. Monsieur, Poirot called, his voice still Dupont's. You seek the Titian, oui? The figure turned, their voice muffled. You're a fool, Dupont. You'll find nothing but trouble. They vanished into the passage, but Poirot's camera had caught their silhouette, and the powder would mark their hands. Back in his suite, Poirot removed the false mustache, his mind a whirl. The trap had not caught the chameleon, but it had drawn them out. The clues, the note, the glove, the lace, the earring, the photograph, the letter, were aligning, and Lady Eleanor's warnings, Clara's nerves, Victor's secrecy, and Dr. Hart's insight formed a pattern. The chameleon was close, their mask slipping. Poirot, as Dupont, would press harder, his little gray cells ready to spring the final trap. Chapter 13. The unseen faced the night-cloaked Ravenwood Manor in a shroud of darkness, its ancient walls standing sentinel against the restless wind that rattled the windows. Hercule Poirot, still masquerading as the flamboyant Monsieur Henri Dupont, stood in the dimly lit corridor of the West Wing, his mustard-yellow waistcoat a garish contrast to the somber oak paneling. The red cravat hung loosely, its ends frayed, and the false mustache itched faintly, though Poirot's green eyes, sharp behind the oversized spectacles, betrayed no discomfort. In his pocket, he carried the chameleon's taunting note. The black, silk glove with its silver-threaded cuff, the sapphire lace, the pearl earring, the torn photograph of a woman with auburn hair, and the old letter hinting at a hidden painting. The thefts of the Emerald Star and the rare manuscript, coupled with Gordon Blake's murder, had woven a web of intrigue, and Poirot's trap, the fictional Titian painting, had provoked a fleeting glimpse of the chameleon the previous night. Tonight he would push further, using the manor's secrets and his disguise to unmask the master of deception. The drawing-room trap had failed to capture the chameleon, but it had yielded clues. The camera's silhouette of a cloaked figure, the invisible powder that would mark their hands, and the pressure plate's faint hum. The encounter in the hidden passage had confirmed Poirot's suspicions. The chameleon was bold, intimate with the manor's layout, and unafraid to confront him, even as a shadow. Lady Eleanor's warnings, Clara Duval's nervous lies, Victor Ashford's secretive anger, and Dr. Evelyn Hart's piercing intellect all pointed to a truth hidden in plain sight. The chameleon's note, "You chase shadows, monsieur, but the chameleon shifts with the light," was a taunt, but also a clue to their method. They thrived on misdirection, blending into the manor's chaos like a predator in its element. Poirot adjusted his spectacles, his heart steady but his mind racing. The manor was quieter tonight, the police presence reduced to a single constable dozing in the hall, Inspector Japp having retreated to the village to review forensic reports. The guests were restless, their alibis fraying under scrutiny, their interactions laced with suspicion. Poirot's strategy was to escalate his performance as Dupont, amplifying his role as a greedy art dealer to provoke the chameleon into a mistake. He had planted a new seed at breakfast, claiming to have discovered a hidden vault in the manor, rumored to hold not only the Titian but other Ashford treasures. "Mes amis," he had exclaimed, his spectacles glinting. "A vault magnifique, full of wonders waiting for Henri Dupont to claim." The guests' reactions, Clara's forced laughter, Victor's clenched jaw, Dr. Hart's raised eyebrow, and Lady Eleanor's abrupt departure, had fueled his resolve. Now, as the clock neared 11, Poirot slipped into the library, where the chameleon's clues had first surfaced. The room was silent, the faint stain of Blake's brandy still visible on the rug. He re-examined the bookshelf, his magnifying glass revealing a new smudge of white powder. Theatrical makeup, identical to the traces found after the thefts. The hidden panel was undisturbed, but a faint draft suggested the passage had been used recently. Poirot's heart quickened. The chameleon was active, perhaps preparing their next move. He moved to the drawing room, where the easel from his trap still stood, its blank canvas a silent mockery. He adjusted the candelabra, ensuring the hidden camera was angled to capture the room's entrance, and sprinkled more invisible powder on the door handle. A trap for the unwary. The pressure plate beneath the rug was reset, its bell wired to his suite. Satisfied, he wandered the corridors, his cane tapping a jaunty rhythm, his Dupont persona in full bloom. He paused by a tapestry, lifting it to check the hidden passage door. A fresh scratch on the lock confirmed his suspicions. Someone had passed through recently. In the morning room he found Lady Eleanor, her auburn hair loose, her hands arranging roses with a tremor that betrayed her calm facade. "Madame," Poirot exclaimed, his voice high and effusive. "Such grace, even in darkness. This vault I speak of. It is a treasure trove, no? Perhaps you know of it?" Her eyes flashed, her voice sharp. "Monsieur Dupont, you're relentless. This house has no vault, only ghosts. Stop stirring trouble." Poirot leaned closer, his spectacles glinting. "Trouble, madame? But secrets they call to me. You with your key, you know the manor's heart, oui?" Her hand tightened on a rose, its thorns drawing a bead of blood. "You're playing a dangerous game, monsieur. Some secrets are better left buried." She turned away, leaving Poirot with a shiver of certainty. She was hiding something, perhaps the chameleon's identity. He sought out Clara Duval, finding her in the conservatory, sketching a fern with unsteady hands. "Mademoiselle," he said, peering at her pad, "you capture nature's soul. But this vault, does it not spark your actress's imagination?" She closed the pad, her smile strained. "A vault? Sounds like one of my plays, Monsieur Dupont. But I'm no treasure hunter." Poirot's eyes softened, noting the sapphire clasp of her earring matching the one he'd found. "Bien sûr, but your eyes, they see much, oui? Perhaps you saw someone near the library last night?" Her face paled, and she shook her head. "I was in my room, I don't know anything." Her lie was palpable, her nerves a thread to pull. In the billiard room, Victor was lining up a shot, his movements tense. "Monsieur Victor!" Poirot exclaimed. "You play with such fire, this vault. It is a mystery, no? Perhaps you know its secrets from your Paris days?" Victor missed his shot, the cue ball spinning wildly. "I don't care about vaults or paintings," he snapped. "This house is a prison." Poirot tilted his head, his tone conspiratorial. "A prison, oui, but with treasures, no? Did Monsieur Blake know of such things?" Victor's eyes narrowed, and he stormed out, leaving Poirot with a sense of progress. Victor's anger was a mask, hiding something deeper. Poirot moved on to Dr. Evelyn Hart, finding her in the library, reading a volume on criminology. "Madame," he said, his spectacles glinting, "you study the criminal mind, oui? This vault, it tempts such minds, no?" She looked up, her gaze cool. "A vault is a fantasy, Monsieur Dupont. But if it exists, it's a trap, for the greedy or the curious." Poirot laughed, his voice grating. "A trap? Mon Dieu, I am but a dealer, enchanted by profit. But you, madame, you see the game, oui?" Her lips twitched. "I see a performance. The chameleon plays for an audience, and you're part of it." Poirot's heart quickened, her words cutting close to the truth. He announced at dinner that the vault would be opened at midnight, inviting the guests to witness the unveiling of its treasures. "Mes amis," he cried, raising a glass, "tonight we find the heart of Ravenwood." The guests' reactions, Clara's nervous laughter, Victor's scowl, Dr. Hart's calm scrutiny, and Lady Eleanor's abrupt exit, set the stage. As midnight approached, Poirot positioned himself in the drawing room, the easel replaced by a heavy oak table, draped with a cloth to suggest hidden treasures. The camera, powder, and pressure plate were ready, and he waited, his cane in hand. The guests arrived, their faces tense. Lord Ashford, grim and skeptical, Lady Eleanor pale and withdrawn, Clara, her smile brittle, Victor, his arms crossed, Dr. Hart, her notebook tucked away. "Mes amis," Poirot exclaimed. "The vault is near its treasure's hours, but first a surprise." He pulled the cloth, revealing a stack of blank papers, a decoy. A faint click sounded, the pressure plate. Poirot's eyes darted to the door where a cloaked figure slipped into the corridor. He followed, his cane abandoned, his heart pounding. The figure led him to the west wing, where the hidden passage door stood open. Inside, the air was damp, the walls echoing with soft footsteps. Poirot called out, his voice still Dupont's. "Monsieur! Madame! You seek the vault, oui?" The figure turned, their face obscured by a hood. "You're too clever, Dupont," they hissed, their voice distorted. "But you'll find only shadows." They lunged, a glint of steel in their hand. A knife. Poirot dodged, his reflexes sharp, and the figure fled, disappearing into the passage's depths. Poirot returned to the drawing room, his breath steady, but his mind a whirl. The camera had caught the figure's silhouette, and the powder would mark their hands. The knife suggested desperation, a crack in the chameleon's composure. In his suite, he removed the false mustache. His clues spread before him. The note, the glove, the lace, the earring, the photograph, the letter. The chameleon's identity was close, their mask fraying. Poirot, as Dupin, would press harder, his little gray cells ready to reveal the unseen face. Chapter 14. The Chameleon's Shadow. The dawn crept over Ravenwood Manor with a reluctant glow, its pale light barely piercing the heavy mist that clung to the estate's ancient stones. Hercule Poirot, still cloaked in the flamboyant guise of Monsieur Henri Dupin, stood in his guest suite, the mustard-yellow waistcoat a garish contrast to the room's muted elegance. The red cravat, now slightly wilted, hung loosely around his neck, and the false mustache itched faintly, though Poirot's green eyes, sharp behind the oversized spectacles, betrayed no discomfort. In his pocket, he carried the chameleon's taunting note, the black silk glove with its silver-threaded cuff, the sapphire lace, the pearl earring, the torn photograph of a woman with auburn hair, and the old letter hinting at a hidden painting. The thefts of the Emerald Star and the rare manuscript, coupled with Gordon Blake's murder and the previous night's knife-wielding encounter in the hidden passage, had pushed the manor to the edge of chaos. The chameleon's shadow loomed, large, and Poirot, his trap having provoked a violent response, knew the time to unmask the master of deception was near. The suite was a sanctuary of order, its four-poster bed neatly made, the velvet drapes drawn to reveal the mist-shrouded gardens below. Poirot's notebook lay open on the writing desk, its pages dense with observations. Clara Duval's fragile lies, Victor Ashford's simmering rage, Dr. Evelyn Hart's unsettling intellect, Lady Eleanor's cryptic warnings, and Lord Reginald, Ashford's strained authority. The chameleon's latest note, "You chase shadows, monsieur, but the chameleon shifts with the light," was a taunt. But the cloaked figure's attack suggested desperation, a crack in their carefully crafted facade. The camera's silhouette, the invisible powder on the door handle, and the pressure plates alert had given Poirot a glimpse of his foe, but their identity remained elusive. Tonight, he would set a final trap, using the manor's secrets and his DuPont persona to force the chameleon into the open. Poirot adjusted his spectacles, his heart steady but his mind racing. The manor was quieter this morning, the police presence reduced to a single constable, Inspector Japp having returned to the village to analyze the coroner's report on Blake's cyanide poisoning. The guests were fraying under the weight of suspicion, their alibis crumbling, their interactions laced with mistrust. Poirot's strategy was to amplify his role as a greedy art dealer, claiming to have uncovered the vault's exact location, a fictional chamber beneath the library, filled with Ashford treasures. At dinner the previous evening, he had announced his plan to open it at midnight, inviting the guests to witness the unveiling. "Mes amis," he had exclaimed, his spectacles glinting. "The vault, it is found. Jewels, paintings, wonders beyond. Dreams." The reactions, Clara's nervous laughter, Victor's scowl, Dr. Hart's calm scrutiny, Lady Eleanor's abrupt exit, and Ashford's skeptical grunt, had set the stage for his final gambit. He slipped the clues into his pocket, his cane in hand, and descended the grand staircase, his DuPont persona in full bloom. The dining hall was somber, the guests gathered around a table set with a modest breakfast of toast and tea. Lord Ashford sat at the head, his face etched with exhaustion, a newspaper folded beside his plate. Lady Eleanor poured tea with a trembling hand, her auburn hair catching the light. Victor slouched in his chair, his eyes shadowed, while Clara, her radiance dimmed, toyed with a napkin. Dr. Hart sat apart, her notebook open, her pen scratching as she observed the room with clinical intensity. Poirot entered with a theatrical sweep, his voice high and effusive. "Bonjour, mes amis. What a morning, no? The vault, it calls to Henri Dupont, and tonight we shall see its treasures. But the heart, it weeps for poor Monsieur Blake and the lost jewels." He took a seat beside Clara, noting her fingers tighten around her napkin. Ashford's jaw clenched. Monsieur Dupin, your obsession with this vault is tiresome. We're dealing with a murder and thefts, and you prattle about treasures? Poirot waved a hand, his spectacles slipping slightly. Pardonnez-moi, my lord, but treasures, they heal the soul, oui? This vault, it is a legend, and I, Henri Dupont, shall make it real. He leaned closer, his tone conspiratorial. Perhaps you know of it, my lord. A family secret, no? Ashford's eyes narrowed. If there's a vault, it's news to me. You're stirring trouble, Dupont. Clara managed a weak smile. It sounds thrilling, Monsieur Dupont. Like a story from the stage. But isn't it dangerous, after everything? Poirot's spectacles glinted as he patted her hand. Danger? Mademoiselle, life is danger. But you, with your actress's eyes, you see much, oui? Perhaps you saw someone last night near the West Wing. Her face paled, and she shook her head. I was in my room. I don't know anything. Her lie was fragile, her nerves a thread, to pull. Victor snorted, pushing his chair back. This is nonsense. You're chasing ghosts, Dupont. He stood and strode out, his footsteps echoing in the hall. Dr. Hart looked up, her pen pausing. Ghosts or not, Monsieur Dupont, you're playing a bold game. A vault would tempt any thief, especially one as clever as this chameleon. Poirot laughed, his voice grating. Madame, you see the mind of the thief, but I see only profit. Tell me, what does this chameleon want with such treasures? Her eyes met his, cool and assessing. Power. The thrill of outwitting everyone, including you. They're close, Dupont, and they know you're watching. Poirot's heart quickened, but he maintained his facade. Dr. Hart's insight was unnervingly precise, her detachment a potential mask. He excused himself, claiming a need to inspect the library's art, and slipped into the corridor, his cane tapping merrily. His true destination was the library, where the fictional vault would be opened. He rigged the room with new traps, a second camera hidden in a bookshelf, its lens trained on the floor, a fine thread stretched across the hidden passage entrance, designed to break if crossed, and a decoy chest, filled with blank papers, placed beneath a rug. The chest was dusted with more invisible powder, and a faint bell was wired to his suite. Satisfied, he re-examined the bookshelf, finding another smudge of white powder, theatrical makeup, a signature of the chameleon's work. The hidden passage. Decor was ajar, and a faint scent of floral perfume. Clara's perhaps lingered in the air. Poirot slipped into the passage, his steps silent, his senses alert. The stone walls were damp, the air heavy with mildew. A soft creak echoed ahead, and he froze, his hand tightening on his cane. A shadow moved, swift and silent, disappearing around a bend. He followed, his heart pounding, until he reached a small chamber beneath the library. The room was bare save for a wooden crate, its lid pried open. Inside, he found a velvet pouch containing a single emerald, not the emerald star, but a smaller gem, its cut flawless. His pulse quickened. A plant, perhaps, or a mistake by the chameleon. He pocketed the emerald and returned to the main house, his Dupont persona intact. In the drawing room, he found Clara, her sketchpad open, her fingers trembling as she drew. Mademoiselle, he exclaimed, peering at her pad. You capture the manor's soul, but this vault, does it not spark your imagination? She closed the pad, her smile brittle. It's like a play, Monsieur Dupont, but I'm no adventurer. I just want this nightmare to end. Poirot nodded, noting her sapphire earring matching the one he'd found. Bien sûr, but your eyes, they miss nothing, oui? Perhaps you saw someone in the corridors last night. Her hand shook and she looked away. I told you I was in my room. Her lie was breaking, her composure fraying. In the billiard room, Victor was lining up a shot, his movements tense. Monsieur Victor, Poirot said, his voice bright, you play with such fire. This vault, it is a mystery, no? Perhaps you know its secrets. Victor missed his shot, the cue ball spinning wildly. I don't care about your vault, he snapped. This house is cursed. He stormed out, leaving Poirot with a sense of progress. Poirot sought out Dr. Evelyn Hart, finding her in the conservatory, examining an orchid. "Madame," he exclaimed, "you find beauty in nature, oui. But this vault, it is a different beauty, no?" She looked up, her gaze cool. "A vault is a lure, Monsieur Dupont. You're baiting someone, and they know it." Poirot laughed, his voice grating. "Moi? I seek only treasures. But you, madame, you see the game, oui?" Her lips twitched. "I see a performance. The chameleon is playing for keeps, and you're in their sights." Poirot's heart skipped, her words cutting, close to the truth. He found Lady Eleanor in the morning room, arranging roses with a trembling hand. "Madame," he said, bowing, "your grace calms the heart, but this vault, does it hide in your family's history?" Her hand crushed a petal, her voice sharp. "You're relentless, Monsieur Dupont. This house has no vault, only pain. Stop this before you regret it." Poirot leaned closer, his tone gentle. "Pain, madame? But secrets, they must be freed, non?" She turned away, her face pale. "You're digging too deep, monsieur." Her warning echoed her words in the passage, a thread to pull. As midnight approached, the guests gathered in the library, their faces tense. Lord Ashford stood by the bookshelf, his expression grim. Lady Eleanor lingered near the door, her eyes darting to the decoy chest. Clara sat on a chair, her sketchpad closed, her smile forced. Victor leaned against a wall, his arms crossed, while Dr. Hart stood apart, her notebook tucked away. Poirot, as Dupont swept to the chest, his voice ringing out. "Mes amis, the vault is ours. Treasures await." He opened the chest, revealing a J.